Good morning. It is 5:32. It is 44 degrees and overcast on this March 13. It's 2020, March 13. Yes, indeed. Friday the 13th. Don't even give it a thought. We've already had our bad luck. Again, as we said, 44 and overcast. The temperature is going to get up to 65 today, but not before we've had some rain. Let's get to our headlines, and then we'll get back to the weather. New Rochelle is opening a drive-through coronavirus testing site that should speed up getting the particular statistics in our area. The school district has closed completely after pressure from families and staff. Also, real estate brokers are bracing for an uncertain spring market. And in Yonkers, concerns there have prompted them to call all city schools, close them today. We'll be talking with Hezi Aris about that. Courts statewide are banning persons at risk for the virus. Metro North riders are down 50%. And if you sit here where we sit, your radio station at the train station, it's down even more. And several Catholic schools are also closed. Every sports league has now ceased. That includes Major League Baseball. It includes the NCAA March Madness. We'll have all those stories for you coming up. By the way, NASCAR is going to run, but there'll be nobody in the stands. Let's take a look at the weather in full, and the weather's brought to you, of course, exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.org. 44 degrees as we speak. It's overcast, but we will have some rain, and it's going to continue for a while. It's going to get heavy at times, but then increasing sunshine, getting up to 67, maybe 70 today. Tonight, clear skies. The temperature will be 37 degrees. The wind out of the west, 10 to 20 miles an hour. As we roll into Saturday, clear skies. The temperature is getting up to 52. And Sunday, another sunny day, but a little cooler. The high getting up to 48, and at night getting down, believe it or not, to 28. But remember, it's still March. Beware the Ides of March. So much news this morning, and we're going to get to it. The news is brought to you in the bottom of the hour by Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Pena & Con, Dominic's Fine Cigars, plug-in virtual reality, and our new friends at the Beachmont Tavern. Let's get to our stories, and once again, remember, this is Mornings with Bob Marrone. You're listening to this, I am he, by the way, you're listening to this program from the studio at the train station, the station at the station. This is Radio Westchester. Some of you are listening, we hope, right straight through on Radio Jar, our transmitter application. Others on My Tuner Radio through Bob Marrone in the morning, or Mornings with Bob Marrone, I should say, that application at RadioWestchester.com. Also available on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Periscope, and of course, add to that iTunes and iHeartRadio. And we get right now to the news, folks. There is some good news, if I can mention, on the horizon before we get all into this. Based on some reports this morning, things seem to be leveling off, and it's very early, but leveling not to a great extent yet. But there was a little spike out in China, but it looks like it may be leveling off, and it more certainly, or more, at least the indicators are that it's leveling off a little bit more than that in South Korea. But as you heard yesterday from some of our guests, and probably have read, they've had already some very sophisticated techniques, including drive-through coronavirus sites, something that now we are getting here in New Rochelle, and that is our top story. New York's first mobile testing center is opening. Officials say Northwell Health is setting up a drive-through testing site at Glen Island Park. Governor Andrew Cuomo says it is the first drive-through facility on the East Coast. In order to get tested, people will need to make an appointment with a doctor's prescription first. According to the state's website, quarantined New Rochelle residents will be tested first. The city is currently at the center of our coronavirus outbreak, as you all know by now, and officials have been focusing their efforts to stop the spread with the creation of a containment zone and pushing to get more and more New Yorkers tested. And we thank News 12 for the story. Cuomo said yesterday he's hoping they can soon run an additional 5,000 more tests every day. And staying here in New Rochelle, the entire district now will be closed starting today after pressure from families and staff. This in News 12 as well. The move happened just days after the district closed buildings within Governor Andrew Cuomo's containment area. Some faculty told News 12 that they thought the decision came way too late, and after mounting pressure from families and staff, the CDC recommended the entire district learn from home, and Dr. Laurel Fejo has decided to do that. She announced last night, I have determined that the closure of all our schools is in the best course. This in the wake of New York City, where the schools remain open, but she said all of us should be listening to the CDC. Similarly, in Yonkers, this in News 12 as well, with 6 confirmed cases of the virus, the city of Yonkers will close all schools today to prepare the district in the event of a possible exposure. School Superintendent Edwin Quezada, canceled classes for the roughly 27,000 students who attend the city schools. He asked educators to prepare additional materials so that they have instructional information in case they remain closed for a prolonged area. There were some issues, I know. We'll be talking with Hezi Aris at 8 o'clock this morning. There were some issues there, whereas before the schools decided to close, they did not disclose the whereabouts of the students who were suspect of having the virus. So we'll talk to the managing editor of the Yonkers Tribune about that at 8 o'clock. Now, Yonkers officials also stepped up efforts to spread the virus, include recreational parks, all of their senior programs, the Murray Ice Skating Rink, the mobile tax office, public programs at all libraries. This according to Mayor Mike Spano. Now, people considered at risk of coronavirus will be barred from all courthouses in New York State under new protocols announced yesterday. This in News LoHUD, pardon me. Judges will also be urged to postpone deadlines in court appearances if possible. Sessions will be conducted where possible by phone and video conference if situations and times permit. Prisoner transfer practices will be reviewed, and courts will not be used for non-essential events. And it will be continue to be this way. Now, another one, some of the other things that they're doing, I should see people who have traveled in the last 14 days to China, Iran, Italy, Japan, South Korea, they will not be allowed in court. Anyone directed by a doctor, hospital, or health agency to quarantine, of course, they will not be. Anyone with flu-like symptoms, anyone who was tested positive for COVID-19. You know, it's interesting. So far, regarding the rest of the state, in New Jersey and nearby states, no one has yet said, and I'm saying this only half tongue-in-cheek, by the way, that if you are traveling from New Rochelle, don't come here. I guess we're kind of lucky that no one's thrown us in yet, with Italy or China or South Korea or Iran for that matter. Now, something all of us who work, or the few of us who are left, Bluebird Taxi, myself, this radio station, the security guard, an MTA employee, and a couple of people that work at the snack bar. Other than us, it's quite vacant here at the train station. And but yet that in the light of this report. Now, maybe this is readership across the MTA. But a report this morning out of LoHUD says that nearly half of all Metro-North Railroad's regular commuters stayed home yesterday morning. More stayed home here. Believe me, it's like 20%, if that, of the usual ridership. In fact, there's plenty of space in the parking lot. No tickets, please. We're all kind of here trying to help the community. Don't give us a hard time. Anyway, nearly half of Metro North Railroad's regular commuters stayed home. Thursday's ridership was down 48% from the same day last year. But once again, here in New Rochelle, the situation is a lot, I don't want to say worse, makes it sound awful, but the numbers are certainly significantly less than 50% as we come up on 642. The Roman Catholic Archdiocese of New York announced Thursday that all Catholic elementary schools in its system will close next week through March 20th, with the possibility of lengthier closures. Principals and teachers are preparing educational materials for home-based learning here in this instance as well, as Lowe had reported today. And real estate, there are some concerns growing in the real estate community, although you can't blame them. When the weather changes, they're upset. When the tax bills change, they're upset, and rightly so. It affects the value of property when schools aren't run well, and so the coronavirus is having its effect. And it was kind of cool the way the folks at Lowe had put it. How do you sell a home in the epicenter of a pandemic? Well, obviously you don't, at least not now. The outbreak of coronavirus has left many in the real estate industry asking why, or rather the key question as the normally robust spring market kicks off. And it's going to hurt. Let's face it. It's going to hurt for a little while. But we do expect, obviously, those things to improve. Now, we have to go in a moment to the weather again, but a couple of things we should note for those of you sports fans. Now, we're still going to have a sports guy come on at 7:50. And see what the reaction is, what people might do in lieu of sports. But this is what we know so far. The NBA, the first to cancel the rest, not necessarily cancel the rest of the season, postpone. We don't know what they'll do. We don't know if they'll play games into the summer. Similarly, the NHL is postponed at least for 30 days, likely longer. But what they are looking at is, hey, maybe we will resume the season and just play games instead of through June, through July. They may as well. They skate all summer long now, the athletes, to stay in shape because it's become so competitive in these sports. So maybe they will do that, but maybe they won't. Maybe they will be out of business. So they are closed. And yesterday, the NCAA finally said, after its initial statement that we play the games to empty arenas, they're now saying that, no, we're not going to have any games. And they literally stopped the St. John's game in the middle of the game at halftime. Said, all right, everybody out of here. We are done. The Yankees played yesterday against the Washington Nationals, but in the immortal words of Robert De Niro in Goodfellas, you won't see them no more because baseball has pushed back the start of the season. No more spring games, has pushed back the start of the season by 2 weeks. But the interesting exception to all of this is NASCAR. No people will be in the stands, but again, they don't congregate. They're in their cars by themselves. The pit crews, though, work in close proximity. They will run their races this weekend, but there will be no spectators. And one interesting thing that came out in looking at the sports part of this, and we'll ask Steve Callis this at 7:50, is that they were still going to make money if they broadcast the games because the bulk of the revenue coming from TV, et cetera. So that's why they wanted to do that if they could. They still would have made a good deal of money. And now all kinds of things need to be worked out, who'll get their money back. One thought is that season tickets, you almost never get your money back. What they do is they roll it into the next season, individual games. Likewise, yesterday, I guess midday today, there may be some matinees. After that, the Great White Way will close as well. And this all part officially, too. The governor has declared any meeting of more than 500 people, if you will, null and void. We have a lot more to talk about. We have to share the weather with you again. We'll take some calls as well. But first, let's get to the weather one more time. And as you know, the weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. And it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit UHGC.com. It is 44 and overcast. It's still dark out, because we're, after all, the hated, at least by me and other morning talk show hosts and radio hosts, we hate daylight savings time. I'm still feeling the loss of that hour. At any rate, Now, today, an interesting weather day for sure. We'll have some more rain this morning, and it may get heavy at times. We just passed through a foggy process. Now, it's been the storm's been moving about. It was pretty bad, they said, in central Jersey before, and parts of the valley upstate. Not quite here yet along the Sound Shore, but it might well be. But that rain, even if heavy at times, even if flood-inducing possibly at times, will give way to sunshine today, and we're going to get up to 67 degrees. Clear skies tonight, the temperature 37. Tomorrow, clear skies getting up to 52 and on into Sunday. Another sunny day, but the high only 48. And then at night, we are reminded that this is weird weather. In March, it will get down to 28. And we remind you that we have this section of New Rochelle that is closed off. And when I say closed off, actually it's not. You can drive right through it. You can go there to a restaurant, as George Latimer did the other day. You can drive up and see the wonderful people. And people ask me about this, the wonderful National Guard guys who are out there. You know, some of them are going to get the disease, probably, guys and gals. And something that I said, and I don't retract it, I just need to refine it, because what I'm saying is so that you won't be looking at your city here in New Rochelle as some sort of a closed, militaristic occupation by the National Guard. The National Guard are here because they are employees that the governor can direct to do things. They are manpower. They are people power. And an exaggeration I've been using that I don't detract. Actually, they've been filling bags with food and handing them out. Not that many people are going for the food, by the way. So I refer to them as Uber Eats drivers. And that is not to disrespect them at all. It's about the role they have right now. Now, they certainly are men and women who are trained to fight. And if we ever have something serious, we want them coming in here with their guns and with their tanks and all of that. But right now, they're just here to help you. So then when you see them, don't feel this militaristic thing. View them, you would any other first responders who's simply here to help you. Not to close down the city, not to deprive you of your rights, but to make sure people who, and it's going to be the impact's going to be greater as we move on through this crisis, and older people are concerned as well, because if they have symptoms or they shouldn't come out, how will they get their food? And that's where these wonderful people will come in. But one of the issues I know we had, and I don't have permission to mention it because it was off the record, but a public official came in yesterday after we were off the air and talked about what was going on up by the distribution of food. And what we can piece together thus far is there's no real list of people yet who should be given proactively the food, so they're just handing it out. But the other hard thing, and I'm saying this to members of the press, you know, New Rochelle is it's a city that communicates well. Everybody knows what's going on in terms of the virus and what they ought to do and what place, depending on where they live, each individual has. So they're going about and doing those kinds of things. Of course, some of us, panicking as usual. They got enough toilet paper to build a Lego house or lots of water, and the rest of it. But not a lot of people are walking around up in the North End. But what happens is if someone drifts by, the whole press, we call it a gaggle. It's a press gaggle or a scrum. And they follow that poor person. They want to get quotes because they've all got assignment editors telling them, get sound from New Rochelle. How are those poor people doing? Well, let me share this with my colleagues from the press. Again, we have a 4-hour show to do, so we can't be running out there. We do when we can, the way they are, just waiting, because the people who do what we do behind this microphone are back at the studio and they're out for their 90-second hit. And what I'm asking them to do is please be kind to the New Rochelle people. We don't need 60 of you surrounding one person. This really isn't Armageddon here in New Rochelle, so just chill a little bit. Again, get your quotes, make your deadlines. We relate to that, but just take it easy. People are being besieged more by the press than by the virus itself as we come up on 5:51. Now, the Wall Street Journal, one of the other great newspapers. God, please don't let newspapers go away. It's expensive, but to get the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and any of the tabloids, the Post, the the Daily News, the Washington Post, and other newspapers. It's like food, folks. These papers are great. And the Wall Street Journal, one of the more iconic ones as well. And their top story today is the virus is battering the economy. As you know, we moved into a bear market. But you saw yesterday the market bounced back. And for those of us who are old Wall Streeters, I don't have the kind of money I had when I worked on Wall Street, we're all getting an itch. And do you know what that itch is? When the market drops? Well, when the market drops because of emotional reasons or crises or even war for that matter or certain shortages, one of the things you learn if you've been on Wall Street a while is when a market crashes, there's another word that's out there called opportunity. Because all too often, because of the emotional nature of markets, a particular stock or group of them, or many, okay, drop below the value, the market cap, that is what the stock is worth, drops below the actual value of the company. And that is a red light that goes off, bing, ding, 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 buy, buy, buy. But we all get greedy. And so the thing is, should I buy now or should I wait till it drops early? But that's what you have a financial consultant for. I'm not telling you to go out and buy. But you'll notice there was a bit of a correction yesterday. And again, great charters. My brother happens to be one. Look at those cycles as they go down. When do the hops, when do they start to narrow? When do the highs and lows start to narrow? As opposed to this, it's this. And usually after this, it can go back up. But again, it doesn't go up straight. It goes up like that. And charters do very well, the ones that are really good at it. But forgetting the chart follows human beings and behavior. And it's like anything else. If you have a Beamer sitting out in front of your house and it was worth $22,000 when you went to bed last night. Okay, 60, fine. It was worth 60, but this morning when you got up, it was only worth 50. Yikesies. If it drops to 45, someone's going to buy it from you. And they're going to resell it when it goes back up to 50. So it's the same dynamic. What is the intrinsic value of the asset? And does the stock market drop? And then there are all these other factors. And then when things get better, when, as is now happening to a certain degree in South Korea, and to a lesser extent, but it's a larger body group of people, and as is happening in China, once this thing levels off, there are going to be a lot of buy orders, and the market may unnaturally take a jump up. So be very careful with it. Talk to your financial advisors. But America has great companies. Because of politics, people who don't like the president, or when he makes a mistake in his articulation, as he does often, you want to dismiss everything. You cannot do that. We do have great companies. We have companies that are going to make it through everything thick and thin and prevail, because the nature of the world and the products that they sell and the need for those products globally is never going to go away after this is over. And so those companies are going to weather this fine, and they're going to be great values. My point, for those of us who were there, now they compared yesterday to Black Monday. And I'll share this with you. Black Monday, my mom was, and it's personal anecdotes. You always wonder when you do the news how valuable this is. Valuable in two ways: A, how the market changes, and B, how the market is consistent in certain ways, and B, the beliefs and the notions we carry with us when dealing with sick folks. My mom, it was a couple of years before she died, and it was actually, she was rallying, and she had a great doctor. And she had 2.5 good years when it could have been a lot worse. This is after diagnosis of cancer. At any rate, I was taking her daily, running out of Wall Street with my briefcases. And all of you've done, I'm certainly not the only one, to take my mom to her radiation, to go to this wonderful surgeon who shall go nameless. This was 30 years ago now, over at the Downstate Medical Center. And naturally, this guy had my mother's life, 30 years younger than I am now, still middle-aged, but 30 years younger than I am now. And this was that Black Friday and then Black Monday period. And it was Black Monday. And I was taking my mother for her usual radiation treatment with her oncologist and the radiologists. And so my beeper goes off as I'm in the waiting room. And I check it and I call the office. Bob, when you're done with your mom, you got to get here. The market just dropped. Now, again, when you see it drops 500, 500 isn't that big a deal. I mean, it's a big deal, but it's not that big a deal when the market's at 28,000. But when the market's at 5,000 and you drop 500, that's what made it Block Monday. And here's the interesting thing. This doctor, this God, this person who was saving my mother's life, and I had still, and still do, I think most of us do, look up to doctors. So I've gotten many as friends now, but back then I did not, and I still had all that mystique. And and it was pretty famous, actually, for helping the kind of cancer my mom had. Talk about a role reversal. He comes running down the hallway. And Mr. Marrone, Mr. Marrone. I said, oh my God, something happened to my mother. Can I see you in my office, please? And I run in his office. And he says, the market just dropped 500 points. What should I do? My pension, my future. And talk about a different sensibility that gave me. A, that doctors are human beings, which of course they are. And this guy's working his butt off and he's worried about his pension. And of course, you don't say, please, this is a time to buy. You don't do that. You tell him to go to his counselor. Right? But what we did is, hey, do not panic and sell things. That's the worst thing you could do. It drives the prices of things down, unless an investment you have is fundamentally unsound. And that's what. So, I encouraged him to talk to his broker. Same thing when 2008 crashed, and the radio station I was working at the time, and when the stock market dropped to 6, and older people at the radio station came running over. They know it was same thing. What should we do? And again, you're telling them, please, this is 20 years later than the other problem. Don't go selling. Call your broker. Be careful. It always comes back. Hence, this is a little different because this is global. But the world goes on, and the stock market comes back in this capitalist system that even communist countries have employed. Now they're communist and capitalist together. It's kind of interesting. China's invested, Russia's invested, Vietnam's invested, South Korea. The global markets will be with us forever, and the value of things always returns to two things. One, what it's intrinsically worth, and two, what people think it'll be worth tomorrow or not. So we do both. Yes, the economy is getting battered. Yes, we're going to have shipping companies, airline businesses, retailers, restaurants, and maybe even radio stations, depending on ads. But we're going to be here. We're all going to suffer. And that's life in business. But we'll all come back. So just to put it in perspective, now some of the concerns that were expressed in the Wall Street article and others, usually the stock market and the bond market, it's borrowing versus investing in equity investments, usually they are opposite numbers. When the market goes up, the bond market goes down, and vice versa. But they've both been going down during this crisis, and it has troubled some economists. So just keep that in mind. Do your homework. If you have an investment, keep a steady hand. Don't panic. Call your broker. Call your advisor. Some of the other stories we're looking at as we enter into 7 o'clock. Kansas reports their first death related to the coronavirus. 3 new Johnson County residents tested positive. No time soon, says one writer. We're not going back to life quite the way it was before, but that is only because we'll be a little more conscious of how we test and how we test for new diseases, number one, and number two. Perhaps one of the silver linings of this is both parties will finally look seriously at our healthcare system and the revisions it needs, hopefully, and at least within the context of pandemics. What is herd immunity, and is it a possibility in certain areas? Now, herd immunity, you heard a lot about that when we went through, and we still have these problems in certain communities. People don't want to vaccinate their children. Herd immunity is when you finally get enough people who have either had an illness or have been inoculated, assuming they come up with a virus, with an antidote, a vaccine, quote unquote, if you will. Herd immunity is when so many people have it in the population that it's rare that the virus can jump from person to person to person, and it decreases the likelihood that others will get it. And that's the hump we have to get over at some point, when enough people will have had it and enough people don't get it, and the virus has nowhere else to go but to die off or recede. Will warmer weather help the virus? Most of the analysts are telling us now it will not. And can you get it after you've had it? We do not know yet. Now we have a master in public health coming on with us at 7:20 today, 7:35. We know her as a jazz singer, as a newspaper editor, but she's also a master of public health. And we reach out, by the way, to one of the planet's great infectious disease persons, the former Lieutenant Governor of New York, Betsy Mulcahy. We hope to have her on next week, by the way. And okay. This is just a couple of other stories that were in the news. A bill to make the AR-15 the official rifle of Oklahoma. Look, we're going to talk with Vince Russo about this, okay? Now, Vince is the moderate, as you know, but he's a real strong supporter, way to the right when it comes to gun control and guns. At least that's my view of him, knowing him as I do. But when a state wants to make the AR-15 the official rifle of Oklahoma. what is wrong? You know, what do you that's a I'm not going to put my middle finger up, but that's a middle finger to the rest of society that's worried about guns. Look, I support the Second Amendment. Okay, I do. And I think people have responsible gun ownership as a right. And I don't see why a person can't be allowed to protect themselves and their families. Period. I don't worry about it in case of armed insurrection and all this other nonsense, but hey. But on the other hand, you don't need a cannon. But more importantly, there are people who should not own guns, who've threatened their wives, who have orders of protection, who have mental illnesses, who have criminal records. Sorry. So let's see what he says about the mentality. You know, during one of the debates, and this goes back now 6-7 years, about guns, and my concerns about them match with my belief that the Second Amendment should be protected, I went off to the NRA gun school. And it was a overall 80% wonderful experience. The instructors were, and I don't use this phrase that often, as good as it gets. Safety, how to load a gun, how to keep it safe, how not to keep your finger on the trigger, where to hold it, where not to hold it, in terms of your person, and so forth and so forth. Great stuff. In fact, the hardest thing, if you've never, ever been to a gun class, the most difficult thing about it is putting the bullets in the clips. That's not just a spring. That thing is an ironclad spring. Your fingers, particularly if you're a little dehydrated, your finger hurts at the end of the day. Very hard to put the bullets in the clips. The only reason I say that is very good class, got my certificate, learned how to shoot everything from a pistol to a rifle. Learned the differences among guns and the differences in the way they reacted, the kinds of kickback that they had. And I have to say this, and it bothers me because people have every right. Sometimes you go to a hockey game as a fan or a baseball game and you wear their jersey. But after all of we students finished that part of the day, I want to say about 4 or 5 o'clock, another group of people came in. They came with Jeeps. They came with American and Confederate flags on their cars. They came with holsters. They came with enough ammunition on their bodies to go to war tomorrow. A lot of them came with their children who had holsters and in some cases, assault rifles. They had Jeeps. It wasn't, but most of them. They had Jeeps. They were painted in military and Hummers and things like that. And so what I was trying to assess in that is the mentality. I mean, they have every right to do it. It's their hobby, too. And people go to Comic-Con, and no one makes fun of them putting on a uniform for whatever it is, Spock. So, on one hand, I'm saying they have every right to do that. And it's probably fun, and it's their hobby, so long as they don't hurt anybody else. But when I saw this article this morning about Oklahoma wanting to make the AR-15 their official rifle, I couldn't help but think that there was just something a little wrong about that. Not wrong, questionable, something to be thought of. The great question of, what are they thinking, and what does that mean? I'm wondering what you mean. We're going to come back, take a very quick break, come back, cover some of the other national stories, other things going on. We have an election going on, or will we? We'll talk about that. We'll take a couple of calls, but I do have to do the weather again, as recommended by our wonderful sponsors. So you stay right there. It is 7:06. And it's 44 degrees across the Sound Shore. Here we are, Radio Westchester, your radio station at the train station. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am he. And the weather is thus, but first, the weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. It's 44 and overcast. The sun isn't up yet because of the daylight savings time. Yuck. But we'll have early rain, and we may have some heavy rain in the next hour or two, but it will give way this afternoon. Even as if it's only 44 now, it's going to get up to near 70 today. 67 is the official forecast, but it could get hotter. Tonight, clear skies, the temperature dropping to 37. Tomorrow, a nice day, clear skies, but the temperature a moderate 52. And on into Sunday, more sun, but a little drop in the temperature, getting to 48. The overnight low will be 28. Monday, mostly sunny skies. The high will be 46 degrees. And the top of the hour is brought to you by Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Con, Dominic's Fine Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. And our new sponsor coming on board next week, so we promote them a little extra today. The very fine folks have the best wings in Westchester. Actually, I think they have the best burger, but that's just me, over at the Beachmont. All right, a couple of other stories, and we are going to open up the phones right now. 914-222-3141, 914-222-3141. How do you feel about this? Many of you have sent texts and emails and different things, and we welcome you to join us, again, 222-3141. And if you want to drive in and walk in and say something, you can. There's plenty of parking here, and it's very quiet at the new Rochelle Train Station. And some of the other stories we want to cover. UPS said that, nope, the wrong side. I got to get the general news. Excuse me. My list of stories is out of order here. State and local officials did ban large public gatherings, as you know, here in New York and several other states, and the sports leagues now are all closed. The Supreme Court and other federal courts in the nation's capital, and here we go. Open. Oh, how did I miss that? I didn't turn on my the thing that's supposed to tell me in your ear when you called. I did get a caller, and here he is. All right. I put on the audible, and we're going to take that call, but I just want to finish the story, and we will get to the caller. The Supreme Court and the other federal courts in the nation's capital said they would close to the public indefinitely as a health measure. Let's go to the phone. Good morning. You're on Radio Westchester, and thank you for calling.
Hey, Bobby. It's how are you?
Anthony, how?
That's me.
Click,
Good.
click,
You?
click.
I got to echo.
Click, click. I hope that's not my phone doing that to you. Okay, we're good. What's on your mind, young man?
Okay. As upset as you were about the daily news from today, that's the way I
Hold on. Let me see if I can do something. Call me back. I'm going to disconnect this line. Call us right back. All right. I think what happened is we were calling him at the same time he was calling us, so we're going to ask him to call us back. Again, 914-222-3141. All right, I think we're good. Now, Anthony, I'm sorry about that. Okay, I don't know if that's your phone or ours. Do you have the hotline?
I'm on a land.
No, but do me a favor, call us on the hotline. If you have the number, call
I
us
think
back.
I have it. Right.
It's, I'm going to you. It's 999-4006, 999-400. Wait, we're good. Whatever happened is spent. Okay, good. Anthony, what's on your mind? Oh, no, he did hang up. So that means it was his phone. All righty. He will call on the hotline, and we will get him in. So much going on, and I know one of the things that Anthony called about yesterday was the Wuhan virus. We actually put that in our monologue yesterday. People shouldn't get so overly sensitive about calling it the Wuhan virus. We've named everything after people and locations after it happened. All righty, he's on the hotline. Good morning. Sorry about that.
Hey, no problem, Bobby.
What's going on?
as disappointed and upset as you were with the Daily News front page yesterday, that's the way I felt yesterday. And I understand it's the political season. There's a presidential election coming up, silly season, call it whatever you want. But when people come out, especially a former vice president, and Bernie, and say that the person at the top of an emergency situation is unqualified, is stupid, that's really the way, to cause more havoc and more panic amongst the general population. And they could have done it so much differently. And this just goes.
I agree
to show,
with you.
And listen, I'm not giving the president any credit. He's made flubs, but what I will give him credit for is that there are people in the right places right now, like Dr. Fauci.
Yeah, this guy Fauci's been everywhere. The president's done the right thing there. If I just throw this in defense of the president, I tried to cover this yesterday. He's not the most articulate guy in the world, and sometimes he says things that are flubs. But yeah, I agree with you. I don't like when we attack someone in the midst of a crisis at all.
I don't care about attacking. I'm talking about what happens to the general public when they do that.
Yeah,
that's my concern. I don't care about. You could attack the president, you could attack Bernie, you could attack Joe. We've all done it because, they're all human and they're all fallible, and if they can't walk on water, and that's fine. But what happens to the general public when you go out and make those kind of statements? You can say I would have handled it differently. You can say I offer my assistance to the president. There are a lot of things you could have said that would get your message across. Granted, not as pointedly. Maybe, because there's a primary going on, they felt they had to do it. But, for people who say that their greatest concern is the health and welfare of the general public, none of the politicians are showing it.
No, that one of the, as you know, you and I sometimes talk off air too. I'm brokenhearted at that attitude in our country. That's why I spoke yesterday. The best part of the president's speech is when he said we have to put partisanship aside. And I just wish we can do that. I don't know if you remember years ago, I used to have from the Washington Times, I think he was, the presidential historian guy, the guy Goldman, I can't remember his first name. And if you remember, I asked him, I said, hey, let me ask you something. This is when Barack was president. And I said, if the president had the cure for cancer in his pocket, and a Republican could pull it out of his pocket and steal it and rip it up, would he do it? And he paused a long time because he wanted to be fair, and he said, yes, but so would the Democrats. That
Absolutely.
part of our country, it breaks my heart.
There's absolutely no question about that. And like I say, that's understandable. It's understandable, in time of election. But we have to now understand that although we're in a time of election, the health crisis that we face right now has to take priority.
I have to agree with you. I can't even throw a snowball at you. Besides, I wouldn't hit you anyway.
It's just sad. It's a sad state.
Did you are you aware that the press is really becoming a pain in the butt up in the North End? Someone walks out of their house and they got a whole press gaggle chasing them for comment.
I had a friend of mine tell me he went in to get food and they were all sold out because the press corps took everything.
Well, that's fair enough. They got to eat, but and again,
I'm just saying how they've inundated New Rochelle. That's what I'm saying.
In fact, they have those permanent camps set up, like in front of City Hall, where the mayor and Chuck, the city manager, rarely speak from there. They usually speak inside the rotunda. They have like 10 cameras already set up. In other words, they're pre-set up there. They're pre-set up in the middle of the city. And look, we're in the news. It's the price you pay. But boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
Well, I got to inject a little bit of humor here.
I wish you would. I'm still not. I still haven't gotten over your best, though. You're not going to top.
You things are of grave concern, or I shouldn't say grave, of major concern when you see Mayor Bramson and City Manager Strom give interviews to Fox News.
Oh. That's very, very true. Speaking of humor, I don't know if you heard this segment we did. I had a ball with those guys from Rock and Robin yesterday, and I said, I'm just going to have a ball with this, and people got to be able to hopefully radio and TV is all we're going to have now.
Yeah, that's
So,
really what it boils down to, at least for the immediate future. And you know what? Maybe if there's a silver lining, maybe families will remember what families
I
are
was
and what they're
thinking about
supposed to
that.
do.
Family dinners and stuff,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
maybe more babies.
My wife had a birthday on the 10th. Mine's coming up
Oh,
this weekend.
that's
So
yeah. Oh,
instead
wait,
of
wait, wait,
going
wait, wait.
out to,
Back up,
I wasn't going there, but now
back
that you
up,
mentioned it,
back up.
I was talking about my own plans.
Yes, but how old are you going to be?
65. I have no problem with
You
it. I'm the official
miserable,
speed limit in
decrepit.
upstate New York.
You miserable and decrepit.
But you got the autobahn coming up.
Yeah, I do. I hate it.
But as I was saying, instead of going out to eat as we normally would, we're now going to be at my son's house. My other son will be coming over with his fiance, and we'll be partying it up in the backyard and in the house.
And I'm not saying this. I mean, I'm saying this to be salty and a little bit lighthearted, but also it's true. A lot of babies going to be conceived in the next
There'll
couple
be a
of
lot
months.
of New Year's babies, no doubt about that.
A lot of New Year's babies, and remember what that's like. Now, anyway, I'm sorry, I was just dreaming. So yeah,
What's that song? I forget the name of that song. There'll be one child born in a world to carry on.
oh yeah, that's
So
right.
while this pandemic may be taking many, it will result in fostering many.
That's what I've always. You know what I've always been a little jealous of, because it compels you. I mean, we could all do it if we
A
wanted.
lot of things you're jealous of.
No, I have a lot to be jealous of. But I've always been jealous of Orthodox Jewish folks who on Friday turn off everything and they're just home alone with their wives and kids. Imagine just turning your attention. You can't put the TV on, and I'm sure I know all the rules. Boy, if you and your wife can't have a tender moment, then, that's, you almost, it gives you a good case to make. Look, we're here. We have everything we need, right?
You're giving people a look into your psyche, which is very dangerous.
I know. It's
and
right.
not very pretty.
No, it's not. Anthony, thank you very much for the call. Good call. Thank you. I hate him. He's going to be 65. He's going to be 65. Happy birthday, Anthony. Oh, you'll pay on Monday. Trust me. And then speaking of another pain in the butt who's on the line, I can tell by the annoying beep the phone made. He called 2 minutes early. Vince Russo's up next as I go through. I love these news. I still love my newspapers. God, I love them. Dr. Fauci, Walt Disney. Oh, yes, Walt Disney shut their park as well. See, you know why you know it's Vince? Because the phone made an annoying sound, and if you don't know anything about Vince, the sound gives you a headache, and headaches and him go together. Good morning, Vince.
You stole my line. That's what I was going to say about you.
Nah, yeah, if I were you, I wouldn't be bragging about stealing lines. How you guys doing in Jersey with the coronavirus?
Well, we've closed all the schools, the library, etc.
Aren't you on the board of the library?
Yes, I am.
Did you make that decision? Why can't people go and read a book, for God's sakes? We can't do that either?
Well, they don't want any gatherings of, people. They don't want to keep separation. And, I was reading an article about the 1917 Spanish influenza, and they were saying in that outbreak they found that separation did work. It was.
Oh, it does work.
Very valid.
Oh, no, it does work. So are you one of the people that signed off on that decision as the Grand High Exalted Mystic Ruler of the library?
No, I had nothing to do with that. They were following the lead of the schools. They said if the schools closed, the library would close.
Do you know what's interesting? In New York City, and I think they're concerned about what the kids will do, they're trying not to close the schools. I wonder how long that's going to last.
Yeah, that's not going to last.
This is wrong of me, but I got to go there. Maybe they don't want the crime rate to go up. If I'm not honest, I shouldn't do this, but I guess they could. So, no more sports, no hockey, no basketball, no NCAA, etc., etc., etc. What do you think people are going to do?
Well, that's a good question. And they're going to have to be home in their houses. They still have the internet.
And I started staring at my bookcase and saying,
yeah, I mean, some people will do that. Probably not many, but they'll look at things on the internet, watch old movies or such like that. I think the more important thing to me is not the virus itself, but the fallout from it, and it's going to be very interesting in the next week or two to see if there's any food on the shelves.
Well,
And
yeah, because people, in fact, they've had to control lines going into Costco's and places like that. And as we know, you tried to go and buy inexpensive chicken, and there was none left.
yeah, but I could actually walk in the store. I'm going to go by the BJ's today and see what it looks like. I mean, this is really going to get ugly. I mean,
See, I'm not that. I think we'll be okay that way, unless people just get totally crazy.
well, what's going to happen is, you know, the as you get more outbreaks, you know, people are going to stop reporting to work, or the business is going to be ordered to be closed. And you know what happens if there's nobody in the chicken processing plant? What happens if
What?
there's nobody in the trucking company?
But you see, that's what because eventually, and I said this yesterday, and I think I said it prematurely, and that is at some point in time, Americans are going to do what Americans have always done. Some of us are just going to have to be brave about this. Some of us are still going to have to show up to work. Some of us are going to have to say, if I get it, I get it. Doctors, frankly, broadcasters, doctors.
Well, yeah, but that's not going to be the people who are, you know, down in the trenches, you know, packing goods in boxes.
Okay, let me ask you something. If you were raising a family and you were trying to make a living, you know, I mean, you're not retired now because you joined public service, but go back when you had no money and kids, and you know, and you're struggling, and the boss says, "Hey, can you come in? We'll give you double time." I'd take the risk.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure there'll be people who will say that, and other people will say, "I don't care how much money you're paying, I'm not coming in." So,
Well, that's true, but I'd like to think we got enough of us that would do it.
well, I hope so.
Because although
you
this
know,
generation is different, the younger folks today don't want to go to work if it's a sunny day out. So I don't, I don't know about that, but
well, you know, this other thing about Trump and people criticizing Trump over this whole thing. The problem with Trump is you never can rely on what he says. You know, he you don't know if he's, you know, telling the truth, if he's just obfuscating things, if he's trying to do stuff for political reasons. There's never a baseline where you have a comfort level that he's saying the truth. And it's, you know, one day he says, "Oh, this is all, you know, it's nothing," and another day he says, "Well, you know, we're looking at it," but is he really doing it? Or is
well,
he
that's
just
why you got to
saying that?
listen to Fauci. This guy Fauci. Do you know that guy Fauci has been in every administration since Reagan?
Yeah,
You,
yeah.
so
It's a surprise that he's still around because Trump got rid of all of those career public servants that had any kind of qualifications and put in all these yahoos that weren't qualified.
You know who's is a disappointment? You know, it's such a great paradox in my life to call a brain surgeon an idiot. But I get, but the guy that took over Health and Human Services,
Carson, yeah.
Carson. And what a disappointment he is to his
Well,
profession.
yesterday, Sean Hannity was still saying this whole thing's a hoax.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, but you see, if anyone who listens to Sean Hannity or Rush, other than to feel good about confirming their own bias, you just can't take it seriously. I mean, I refuse to put on Sean Hannity. And I am sorry that when I click through my television that I even see his face for 2 minutes. Because he's one of the people that created the country we live in today. Not that there weren't the far left that drove them there, but his disingenuousness, his being involved in the very politics that he reports is sad.
Well, I disagree with something that you said before where...
What?
Well, you said you were speaking to someone and asked them, if the president had a cure for cancer, would the Republicans, tear it up so that he couldn't put it out there? And you said, well, the Democrats do the same thing.
That's what he said.
Believe me, I am not a Democrat or a Democrat apologist.
You're a Republican public servant, for God's sake. You're the rare breed. They're going to put you in a museum soon.
But when Trump was elected, the Democrats did not come out and say, our job is to make him fail.
Well, no, they sort of did come out and say, our job is to impeach the mother effer.
Well, I don't know about that. But when Barack Obama was elected, the first thing Mitch McConnell said was...
that very day they held a conference.
That very day he said, our job is to make him fail.
Yes.
It's not to do what's right for the country. It's not to oppose him and put in good policies. It's to make him fail. And, they've been doing that from day one. And I don't know.
You got to be careful they don't boot you out of your own party when you talk like that. Isn't that? Aren't you guilty of what's the word that I was looking for? Being subversive.
Well, you know what? Just like we're supposed to criticize our country when we don't feel things are right, we're supposed to criticize our party.
I know.
And you know, I said this to people so many times. The Republican Party is so much better than Donald Trump. I mean, it's pathetic that this guy is.
Well, having
leading
said
the
that,
party and
though,
leading the
having
country.
said that, though, and this is to go with your premise, why have they not shown more spine in pushing back on some of his behavior?
Oh, because they're knuckleheads too. All they care about is getting elected. They don't care about the country. That's why we need term limits. We can't have people in there for 40 years. If you put people in there who are only going to serve a finite period, maybe they'll have some backbone and say, look, we got to do some stuff that's beneficial to the country and not worry about, what donors are going to be peeved at us and not worry about getting reelected. The Congress is ridiculous. A 2-year term, as soon as they take office, they're starting to run for the next term. So we need term limits, like from the president all the way down to the lowest levels of government that there is. But the other thing I wanted to ask you was what's so bad about having the AR-15 as your state?
Well, what's so
rifle?
bad? Because it speaks to a mentality that I have to get personal now that I abhor. What is the point of having an AR-15 be your? I mean, it's like people that paint pictures of the devil on their wall instead of Jesus. Why? I mean, why? It's like the ass. Excuse me, I almost said that. Who have testicles hanging from the back of their pickup trucks, and the devil's head on the back of the pickup truck next to a gun saying, I forget what it's called. Look out, because I have a gun in here and I'll shoot you. Don't tread on me. And there's a malevolence and an anger in there that I need to understand.
Well, I think.
And also, sometimes they have a little pit bull sitting next to them to remind people, this pit bull is my mirror. No, I'm sorry. That wasn't even being funny. Because you know what it is? See, this is why you're going to hell. Because you know how much those things annoy me.
I'm just asking.
No. Because that's not. No, folks, this is what he does. Like, I haven't done it a lot on this particular show, but I'm always making fun of the commercials that are selling you nonsense using a British voice because you buy it. It must be smart. I have to buy bee testicle wings in order to I'll get young, because that's right, folks. America wants you to buy that car. Give me a bleeping break. I'm still waiting to find a car dealership that's honest. Did you ever go into a? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
People are feeling, certain segments of the population are feeling that, on the one hand, the liberals are saying, just let anybody into the country and give all this stuff to illegals, and on the other hand, they're saying, well, we want to take, rights away that are guaranteed in the Constitution for American citizens, and I think there's always going to be a pushback to that. People are just feel that that's wrong, and so you're going to get reactionary things like that. I mean, where
No, I know. I just have a lot of
we'll show
fun.
you guys, the thing that you hate the most. Well, we're going to make that our state.
No, I know, and
they're
then you're going to make it. I know. And look, I'm guilty of it too. Like, I used to get people crazy when I could tell that they hated Barack Obama for reasons more than his policies. So I'd say, your concern is that he was born to 2 chinchillas in Mexico, right? Is that what you know? And I did it just to be annoying, or like you all do who watch Fox News every day. You say Democrat and refuse to say Democratic because it's a way of twisting it. They're not Democratic, those liberals. They're not. Rush always says, the Democrat Party. And I know as soon as you say it, the only person I've ever known to say it innocently is Tom from Pelham. He doesn't know that he's actually gaslighting people when he does
Well,
it.
to set the record straight, I don't listen to Fox News. But, there was an interesting thing out in Arizona, I think it was, or New Mexico, one of those states. You know how they're having these sanctuary cities for all these illegals, and, they're saying regardless of what the law is, we're not going to enforce it, et cetera. Well, those, there's certain counties out there that said, hey, guess what? We're going to be gun sanctuaries, and we don't give a crap what.
I defended them. That's a separate issue.
The governor out there said, well, you either enforce the law or resign, like to the sheriffs and all that. And the response is, well, you either enforce the immigration laws
But
or
you're right.
resign.
You see, you're right. But you see, here's the problem that you and I are both having now. You get no credit for being reasonable. You get no credit for being consistent. Like what I've been howling for a year, and I've given up because I've talked to lawyers, I've talked to judges. The biggest intellectual timidity, cowardice, unwillingness to assert themselves that even make Mueller look brave, which is a stretch, make the comptroller of New York, Tom Abenante. By the way, I came up for a word for him. Not Tom Abenante, excuse me. I said the wrong name, but the comptroller of the state of New York, I call him the boneless chicken, the spineless chicken. At any rate, are people who refuse to weigh in on the emoluments clause. Even the president himself said it's silly. So we got people running around the streets shooting people, saying it's my right to shoot him, but yet no one says it's the right of the people to enforce the emoluments clause.
Yeah.
It was poorly written. It's poorly understood. It can't be enforced. And while the president was wrong to say it was phony, he would have been right to say it is totally worthless and useless. And it shouldn't take an idiot like me to say it. So one of these people that come on here and supposed to know the law should have said it.
Well, yeah, I mean, to say it's phony is like silly because it's in the Constitution. I mean,
It's a
written down.
phony fraud hoax. Look at the testicles on the back of my truck and know who I am.
So what do you think? After this thing blows over, they're going to resume the NHL season, or they're going to?
They're talking about moving it into July, actually.
Into July, huh?
Yeah, but it depends. Already, fortunately, we're seeing signs. South Korea has run this very well. They have a much better medical system than we do in that way. And they've already looks like they've peaked. And even China, it looks like they've peaked in terms of cases.
Yeah,
So,
well, China, I wouldn't trust them to say today's Friday, but
it's a lot like the United States these days.
They're such liars and frauds that it's
What did
amazing.
Bob Grant say? A fake, phony fraud?
Fake, phony, and fraud.
Hey, let me do. Do you remember my favorite Bob Grant anecdote? Was I'm listening, and even Christmas, I used to listen to talk radio. I forget where I was driving to my mom's house, and some guy called up, and he was all sad. And he goes, "Bob, why do you treat me so badly?" And he says, "I abuse you because you annoy me." So great. Hey, I need a witness here. Now, I've been on there, and it's not going to get me sponsors, but maybe the car dealership that really runs an honest shop, if they do and you're out there, I will advertise you and I'll do shows at your place. But in my lifetime, I've never been in a car dealership that I trusted. In my lifetime.
You mean when you purchase or when you bring the car in for service?
Both.
Yeah.
But having said that, certainly purchasing a car. Do you remember what I once did, because you were there with me, what I did to the sales guy? Do you remember the time I threw myself on the floor and said, "Sell me a car, please, please"?
Well, that's when Hondas were the rage, and you had to pay over list. The big thing is service, and the problem there is that the service managers get paid commission on how much service they sell, so they're always trying to upsell you.
Yeah, and they're always trying to give
Well,
you
they're
service you don't
also-
need. Yeah.
They're also trying to, they're hoodwinking you if you don't know anything about cars, especially when women bring their cars.
Well, what about the salespeople? It's like they emptied a halfway house or a prison, or people who don't know how to dress. You want to buy this car? Yeah, they drive me nuts.
Well, it's one of the few commodities that you can go in and bargain for. Usually, you go into some place, they're selling a product. They say the product costs this much amount of money, and you go in, you buy it, or you don't buy it.
No, not
With
there.
autos,
No.
it's this whole tradition of going in and bargaining and all of this kind of business.
Yeah, get me started. Do you remember I had the world's only Toyota Lemon?
Yeah. Although I think that's a fallacy too. I think Toyota makes a decent car, but I think they're overrated.
Well, but at the time, they were.
Yeah.
I mean, this was '82, and I got I don't. And the way you treated me, you and your wife treated me every time I call. What would you say when you pick up the phone?
You got it.
Yeah,
Toyota.
see, then that means, and you got it because you got to go, because Janelle Albritton's up next, and we're going to talk about washing your hands and bathing. You know what I was doing? I was thinking of making myself more attractive to women by bathing in Purell. You think that'll work? Gargling with Clorox?
I don't know. Well,
Listen,
somebody said, you should gargle with bleach, to.
who the hell said that? You'll
Oh, I
kill
don't know. There
yourself.
was one of these things on the internet that was saying to prevent it. Imagine somebody actually doing that.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it's pretty scary.
All right, I'll talk to you later, Knucklehead.
All right,
Thank
man.
you very
Talk
much,
to you later.
Vince Russo. Janelle Albritton will be calling in. She is a master in public health. Now, the cool thing about Janelle is, as you know, she does too many things. I can't keep up with her. She is the editor-in-chief of the Westchester County Post.com. She's a videographer. She is a jazz singer. Does so many different things, but she's also worked with prisons and used her master's in public health. She knows a lot about that. And we're going to talk with her about the coronavirus coming up in a few minutes. In fact, she is scheduled even as we speak. But first, a little bit of weather. It is 44 degrees, still overcast, and the rain that we promised you is coming down now, and it's going to rain heavy at times. There's even a minor flood watch in effect for parts of Westchester County, but we think it's we don't think you're going to have any problems, but the rain will give way in the afternoon as we head towards sunny skies and temperatures in the upper 60s, maybe even 70 today. Saturday, clear skies, temperature dropping to 42. Then Sunday, the temperature drops to 48, but still a sunny day. But overnight low, it's getting down to 28. You'll need your jacket. And the weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And of course, the bottom of the hour is supported by Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Con, Dominic's Fine Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. Jake, get in the seat of honor. We have a couple of questions for you. One of the major parts of the news today is bigger than a breadbasket. All sports. Everything, Jake. Everything. And we're going to talk with Steve Callis, of course, in about 20 minutes' time. All sports are gone.
That is not true.
Well, NASCAR.
WrestleMania.
Really?
WrestleMania is still on.
WrestleMania?
Uh-huh.
But with the thousands of people that'll show up grunting, and of all the sports.
Yeah.
Now, who runs that? Is that the guy up in Connecticut, or is that
Vince
a different?
McMahon, yeah.
It is McMahon. But the governor's not pulling the string on that up there?
I guess not.
Wow, okay, so you got me. What about, what do you think about the rest of it? What do you think people are going to do with their sports stuff?
Just going to be a lost season.
It is going to be a lost season. Now, the NHL says that they may play right through to July if they can come back in time, but the question is, can they, will they?
I think they will. I think the NBA will be back probably, what do you think, 3 weeks?
Yes.
A month?
Yeah, but it all depends if the virus peaks and things start to abate. Now, you live over in Larchmont. How's the tune there? Or Mamaroneck? Larchmont,
I'm in Larchmont, yeah.
How is the mood there?
It's eerie. I take the train in to and from every day, and it's just completely quiet, empty.
As you see here, it's empty. You and I, there's me, you, the guy and the gal that work the snack bar and the guard, and one MTA employee, and then a couple of odd people.
I got some fresh Vegas statistics for the presidential race.
Okay, give us those.
I found this to be interesting. This is fresh yesterday. Mm-hmm. One of the sports books, because they can't do any sports, so they got their people on the presidential.
Okay, what do we got?
Trump at 50% to win. Biden at 43% to win.
Wow.
Bernie Sanders 2.7%. Hillary Clinton 2.2%.
She's even in the race?
Michelle Obama 1.1%.
And what about Jake Schaefer?
A little bit under Michelle.
A little bit under. All right, we're going to go talk about how you can stay there or back. He likes this little corner that he likes to sit in when he does his research. You can do either. We're going to talk to our wonderful friend. We've already introduced her and the things that she does. You know her mostly as the editor-in-chief and publisher of the Westchester County Post, but today she's here as her one of her other skills as a master in public health. Janelle Albritton, good morning.
Good morning.
It's wow, how you're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed today. That's nice.
Yeah, I popped open at 6:15, and I was afraid I'd overslept.
No, you didn't oversleep. Welcome to the program. I know we've even got a call. If we go later, Steve has said he'd even, and I think he's worried there's no sports to talk about, that he would he would, what was I going to say? Cede his time to you. What in the world of public health, what are the things that people ought to be doing we need to remind them of, and what are your biggest concerns?
Well, my biggest concern is that people don't make the changes that they really should have made before all this mess began.
And what are they?
Well, one of my mottos is preventing the preventable. So there's a lot that we can do to strengthen our immune systems by the choices that we make. So beyond, of course, there's hand washing. There's lots of video on that, the universal precautions. It's not just rubbing your palms together for 20 seconds. It's making sure you're vigorously rubbing all surfaces of your hands, in between the fingers, etc. And using paper towels instead of the blow dryers.
Why is
but
that?
Beyond
And I'm holding up a paper towel for your benefit. Paper towels, folks. Go ahead. Jake,
yeah,
paper
towel
paper?
Because it's more sanitary. It's more sanitary.
I didn't know that, and I prefer paper towels anyway. Well, yeah, I read that, and my daughter's a microbiologist. I should be getting her on too, but you try to avoid family stuff. Why are these hand dryers not as sanitizing as, say, a paper towel?
Well, we're all adults here, so we'll just say it. When the toilet flushes, it can make a mist up to 10 feet.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
And so if there's like loose stools in the water, it can create a fecal mist where, bits of fecal matter are in the air.
If you're eating breakfast, folks, turn it off. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so, we're breathing that stuff all the time, and then the blower, the air dryer is just pulling air in from the room. It doesn't create its own air magically. It's creating.
So what you're in effect, it's like in an airplane without necessarily a purifier or a filter. It's recirculating the same air.
Yeah, and it doesn't have its own clean air source that it's blowing out onto your hand.
Okay, so paper towel
one
is
that I
best.
like, there's a UV light that helps to sanitize, but I'm not sure how effective that is. Soap is really helpful because it makes the surface of the skin slick and the germs literally slide off the skin.
Mm-hmm.
But in absence of soap, a vigorous scrubbing with water can have much the same effect. But beyond hand washing, I want to encourage folks to quit all dairy, all eggs.
Whoa, but slow down.
Cut
Now
down
this,
on refined sugar.
this is radical because people know that sugar is going to kill them. But why should eggs and milk hurt them? And what is your basis for saying that?
So dairy helps to create mucus in the body, and virus and bacteria thrive on mucus. They that's their favorite snack. Eggs have been used in laboratories to
grow
in
virus.
The Petri dishes to grow viruses. And anyone who's ever had the flu or a bad cold or mono has Epstein-Barr virus floating in their bodies, and Epstein-Barr loves eggs. So if you cut off the food source of the virus,
but if you're in, this is just a question that people are going to ask. If I eat an egg, right, and I digest it, once it's digested, does the body still know it's an egg? I mean, it's now broken down into its elements.
Yeah, egg is very easily digestible, and it's very rich, cholesterol, very high protein. It's got all those nutrients in there, and viruses love it. The viruses live in the bloodstream. They reside in the internal organs, doing their damage. And that's a whole conversation that's
interesting.
Is, we could do a separate time. But
but it's interesting. But staying on topic, I know I've heard people say once you get like the flu or something, avoid those things, and now I understand why, because it produces mucus, and as we pass through 746, what else should they be doing?
You want to cut the food supply to the virus.
What else should they be doing? What else
an
preventatively?
Important attitude, and I can't say this enough, the emotional disposition is very important, because stress, worry, frustration, anger, all this stuff actually helps to downregulate the genes that target cancer cells.
But isn't it
downregulates the genes
okay,
that
let me
boost
go
the
back.
immune system.
Let me go back. When you're depressed, when you're anxious and stuff, I know your immune system is affected, but you're taking it now to the genetic level. Do you have science to prove it?
Yes.
What is
There's
that
been,
science?
Dr. Joe Dispenza has been doing extensive studies with
Yeah,
thousands
but
of people.
with all due respect, he's an outlier, though. People need to know that. He's not definitive.
He does a lot of research with a blood test, and they measure the immunoglobulin levels pre and post, workshop. And he's not the only one.
No, I
who's
know. I
done
mean,
this
but
kind
please,
of
I'm not
research.
trying to denigrate him. I know he's
Yeah.
highly regarded, and you highly regard him, but he is still not yet in the mainstream.
Correct, and that's why I'm trying to.
No,
help him
but
get
people
there.
need to understand that because you've got a lot of people are only going to accept what's EPA tested and et cetera, but double-blind studies, et cetera. And there are people.
Yeah, and that's something I'm trying to change because if we wait until the FDA approves things, we'll all be dead.
Well, let's
So we
not
need
hope.
to know
I
what
like
the
you.
science-
I don't want that to happen. Okay, so
we
you.
need to know what the science is. And testing for immunoglobulin levels is a very, very standard way of kind of checking in on the strength of the immune system.
Well, I do
so
know where you're
this is
so
the
right.
whole field.
If I'm highly stressed out, I get canker sores and things like that, and I think everyone
Yeah.
can relate to what you're saying. What else should they be doing?
Well, this is called psychoneuroimmunology, PNI, and there are since the 80s there have been a lot of research showing that the emotional state of a patient is highly predictive of the outcome. So, for example, in the early 90s, there was some research done with HIV positive gay men, and they found that they wanted to see why is it that when a large population of it was mostly gay men in the United States that were kind of the first group that got infected with HIV. Some of them got AIDS right away. Others were asymptomatic for years. And so there was research saying, what's the difference between the two? What's their secret? And so what they found was that when a patient learned that he was HIV positive and he got depressed about it, the depression correlated very strongly with
I don't doubt any of this, but one of the concerns that I have, and with all due respect to the doctor, it cannot be concluded though that the opposite is always so. My point being that we know that prayer works, and even if there's no God, prayer elevates mood, it increases confidence, placebos work, meditation works, and they all strengthen the immune system. But whether or not these are definitive cures for certain cancers, I think is still way, way out there in my view.
No, I mean, I'm not talking about cancer cure right now in this conversation, but I am saying that for well over 25, 30 years, the field of psychoneuroimmunology has been firmly grounded in science, in the biochemistry of the blood.
Is it generally accepted?
Absolutely. PNI is a very mainstream concept in the medical world. It's understood. They can see the profile of the chemistry pre and post, and they see very clear changes. And now
That's
that
interesting.
the human genome mapping is completed, and there's a lot of very advanced.
It is
genetic
7:50. I have to reset here. It's 7:50. You're listening to Radio Westchester. Our guest, Janelle Albritton, she has many different talents, and one of them, she's a master of public health, has a master's in public health, and has worked in that field for many years. What else can people be doing?
So let's kind of recap. First of all, wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands, and do it properly. Look it up on video, how to wash your hands. There's tons of videos online. It's not that hard. It's not just rubbing your palms together for 20 seconds. It's making sure you're rubbing all surfaces of your hand, including between your fingers. Get a brush, scrub under your nails, etc. wash your hands. Number two, be sure to practice. If you sneeze or cough, please cough or sneeze into the crook of your elbow. That's not the best way to do it.
No, but I'm demonstrating for you, by the way. Sometimes I bring my jacket up. Is that bad? Or is that too close?
Well, the thing is, when you're sneezing onto your clothes, then if you have any viruses, you're transferring the virus to the surface of your clothing, which can survive there for up to a week.
I see.
So it's best to sneeze or cough into a paper towel that you throw away immediately, and then go wash your hands.
Okay.
That's so. And if someone else you see someone coughing or sneezing and not covering their mouth, I think in this day and age, it's appropriate to ask them to do so, because it's just basic etiquette.
Well, it is basic stuff. Hey, is
cut
it?
out dairy, cut out eggs, cut down on the sugar.
Mm-hmm.
Get lots of rest. Get as much rest as you can.
Sleep works, doesn't it? It really works. Yeah.
The immune system builds during our sleep time. We go into that delta phase of sleep, and that's when our body is able to restore itself. And then the emotional climate is very important.
Mm-hmm.
Go into gratitude, appreciation. There's scientific evidence that maintaining a grateful, appreciative, positive attitude upregulates the genes that signal the immune system to seek and destroy cancer cells in the body.
Okay, listen, I really appreciate, speaking of gratitude, you being here today. And to that end, are your gigs going forward? Are they in small enough venues where the other Janelle Albritton, the wonderful jazz singer, are you appearing anywhere this weekend?
I performed last night with the Dan Schnapp Quartet at Tony's in J House.
Mm-hmm.
The attendance was about between 10 and 15% of what normally would be there on a Thursday.
Yeah.
But we were there, and it was great fun. And then we went after that to Polpo in Greenwich, and they've got live music there 7 nights a week. So that's always a fun thing.
Are you singing anywhere this weekend?
No, but I'm performing Friday night, March 20 at Toscana on Main Street in Tuckahoe. And then on March 28, I'll be at Martini Grill in Woodridge, New Jersey.
Okay, thank you very, very much. And perfect segue on our other line, and we're going to bring Jake into this, our sports guy, who's probably worried he's going to be out of work. Please welcome, without further ado, he also works at the Westchester County Post. He's the sports editor. Please welcome Steve Callis. And Stephen, good morning.
Good morning, Bob. Great as always, although...
What? Hold
Stranger
on.
than...
All right, something wrong with my Skype, so I'm going to ask you to call on the hotline. Hotline number?
Is that the backup number?
Yep. Number.
I'll call you right back.
Shoot. You love it. Shut up. Now that, for some reason, the phone keeps calling people back. Press home to unlock. It's nice to have a backup system when you're having fun. Once again, Steve Callis joins myself and Jake Schaefer. Good morning, Stephen. Good morning, Jake.
Good morning, Bob. Stranger than usual, but good morning.
Well, we have no football. the XFL's dead. The NHL's dead. The NBA's dead. The Major League Baseball's gone. They're going to run the cars in NASCAR this weekend. But Jake says something else is work. Oh, the NCAA's canceled. Jake, what is on?
WrestleMania.
Did you know that, Steve?
I wasn't sure. Is that a sport, Jake?
Well, it's probably a 50-50. Whoever, depends on who you ask.
No, it's not a sport, but it is a demonstration. But hey, if they cancel Broadway, why wouldn't they cancel WrestleMania? Unless up in Connecticut, the governor's a wuss bunny, kind of like the state controller here in New York.
Well, I have to say, I was up in Connecticut last night, and in terms of the amount of cases, Janelle is right. The restaurant was not empty, but virtually empty. But, they've only had 3 reported cases. That doesn't mean there's not 5,000 cases up there, but they've only had 3 reported cases. Maybe the theory is it's not so bad up there. I don't even know.
I don't know. Jake, do you have any idea about that at all?
I just quickly saw that WrestleMania was still going ahead as planned. That's when you asked me what anything was still going. That was the only thing I could think of.
Well, you saw
and I think NASCAR is still
yes, but no crowds.
no crowd.
And they can do that. They're alone in their cars. Although the pit crews work very closely together. But again, that's only a group of 6, 7 guys. Gentlemen, what in God's name, what are you going to be writing about? Although there are always profiles and you have the draft, what are you guys going to be talking about now with sports on
I think
hiatus?
the most fascinating thing is this idiot from the NBA who was licking microphones, touching all the microphones, and then he was harassing his teammates. He was hugging them, touching them, and he got his teammate infected.
This is after he had it or when they were just kidding him?
He hadn't been tested yet, so he didn't know that he had it, but he was still being an idiot, and he got his superstar teammate Donovan Mitchell infected. How does he go back to I would take a baseball bat to him if he did that to me.
What do you think, Stephen?
Well, I can say we drifted a little at Westchester County Post, but the videos we did this week, and you guys probably know about this or at least heard about it, there's a huge horse racing national indictment of 27 trainers.
Oh, yeah, we did that
vets,
story. Mm-hmm.
And others. And I don't even know if you know this, Bob, but I worked at the Meadowlands in Yonkers for many years. I used to drive harness horses for a living.
You drove the horses?
I did, yeah.
Your fat butt was in those little seats?
Well, my fat butt used to be like, 155 pounds.
Oh, okay.
And, if you want to have a laugh, you can go to, you can click on Steve Callis Meadowlands YouTube or Steve Callis Harness Racing YouTube. There's a couple of victories at Yonkers.
Do you think that
Meadowlands.
Jake and I are going to pass that up? We can't wait to get to our phones.
Oh, no, I'm serious. It's do the Meadowlands one because that's off the TV
What was
feed.
that like? See, we can interview you just on that. What's that like?
It's I'll tell you how I explain it because Mark Malusis at WFAN every year they do a show from the Hambletonian, which you probably know is the Kentucky Derby of harness racing out at the Meadowlands.
Mm-hmm.
And I explain it as, and I'm sure both of you have had these experiences when you're in high school or little league or college, whatever. You hit a home run to win the game. You hit a jumper to win the game. You do whatever, and you're like, that's the rush. Well, that's the rush you get when you're older and you're driving harness horses and you win a race.
That's got to be
the same exact rush. And that's the one thing I found in adulthood, Bob, that gives you that kind of rush that you got when you were, in high school.
Oh, I know that. I know that feeling. Actually, I get to do it when we won.
Well, you do it in hockey, I'm sure, right?
Well, in 2014, we won the championship out in Las Vegas. We got that feeling. And it was a national tournament, so. Yeah, you do. Wow. So, all right. So, where are we going to go with the sports stuff now, guys?
I think the thing to talk about, I don't know if we talk about it this week because it's weeks away, but so, for example, I'll give you the best example, Bob. The Rangers beat Dallas, right? They get a point in Colorado. They tie up the game with 13 seconds left, and now 2 points out of a playoff spot. You can envision the time when everything comes back, but if it's a long time, they might just say, oh, that's the end of the season right then. Let's start the playoffs, as opposed to having at least a week or two to give these teams that are on the bubble, and I don't mean NCAA bubble, I mean the playoff bubble, you have a chance to at least make the playoffs. I think it's, I'm not Janelle. I don't know what's really going on in terms of, I understand what she said about what to do, but is this going to be 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks? Nobody really knows.
Not until it levels off. You know what I might do if I could suggest this? You take teams like the Rangers and the Islanders, who are 1 point out, and take the other 2 teams above them. Give those teams a 1-game playoff.
That's fine with me.
Wouldn't that be great? No, I remember once. In fact, you made me think about the most excited I ever was. I was in the peak of my own hockey in a really high level league. They gave us a 1-game playoff like that, and we won 5 overtimes.
Wow!
And I passed the puck out from behind the net, and my teammate scored. And I never found my gloves or anything. I just threw everything into the air. It was that cool, but.
That's the rush.
Yeah, it really is. So, hey, listen, we're on a short leave because I gave Janelle some of the time, as you suggested. You and Jake, I need to ask you guys this. What will you be writing about? And, Jake, what will you be following?
Tom Brady all the time.
Okay, and you, Stephen?
Well, I think Jake is right because the one thing that is going forward, obviously, is free agency in the NFL. But there's a couple of other things. We did a video this week, a week later, skewering A-Rod because the notion that he could give the Houston Astros any advice is laugh out loud funny to me. And just as Janelle came up with Houston, you have a problem, which you thought was great. She came up with A-Rod, A-Fraud, pot and kettle with the Astros.
I love it. We'll do that. Hey, listen, next week, I'm going to give you an extra, let's do an extra time. Jake and I are going to take you through your paces about being a harness racing driver. That is newsworthy.
That's fine with me. But again, if you want to see the Meadowlands one, that's the best one in terms of it's the TV feed of the first one.
No, you don't know how we roll here. We're going to look at things to ridicule. I mean, what are you kidding?
Ridicule.
Did he fit in that little seat?
You'll see a skinnier guy. That's all I can tell you.
We'll have fun. Steve Callis, what are you doing this weekend? Will you be on The Fanatic, or are they going to cease to exist?
Yeah, I'm waiting. I'm doing the podcast with Joe Stazak at 10:30, and he's going to give me the weekend schedule. I'll put it up at Facebook. But right now, everything's kind of up in the air, even down there. What are they going to talk about?
Well, I know. Well, thank you very, very much. We will be back. We have to go now to our next guest because of a breaking story out of Yonkers. And just as he told us yesterday when this story broke, the powers that be in Yonkers did not want to reveal to Hezi Harris, the editor-in-chief of the Yonkers Tribune, where their cases or suspected cases of the virus were in their schools. But finally it was announced in the middle of the night that the school were closed. But the schools were closed in Yonkers, but the man covering it, none other than Hezi Harris. Good morning, Hezi.
Good morning, Bob.
So
great show this morning. I really enjoyed it.
So what are you thinking? What's going on up there?
Well, I guess you implied it. The big.
Oh, damn it. Something wrong with my again. Hez, I want you to call back the other line. Call me on the other line. What the hell's the matter with this phone? This is the great thing about live broadcasting, folks. You get to see it with all its hickeys and bells and whistles, but you just heard a whistle and a bell. Go ahead, Ezzy. I'm sorry. We had a problem with that phone line. Go ahead, sir.
No problem. Well, you intimated that there was a problem in Yonkers, and that had to do with the Yonkers Board of Education. The superintendent of schools has been keeping it very much on the down low. He hasn't been telling anybody what's been going on. The amount of people, students that are supposed to come to school has dropped precipitously over the last 2 to 3 weeks without a word. So no one was knowing what was going on. And then all of a sudden, the night before, we found out that they were going to have a special meeting, and we gave notice of it, but there was no notice of the special meeting on the calendar of the Yonkers Public School website, and nowhere else. Nobody even knew about it. So it was a very inside sort of thing, but we got notice of it through, we got people all over the place. You can't do anything without us knowing.
Hezi finds out. You cannot hide from Hezi Harris.
No, you can't. You can't. Not anymore. Maybe 10 years ago, but not anymore.
Okay, so go ahead. I'm sorry.
It turns out he didn't notify anybody, and the purpose of it was to actually close the school down today, which it was. And we had also pointed that out. And when we wrote our editorial the night before, they freaked out at City Hall and said, "Oh my God, what else is he going to say?" So they decided to open up and talk things a little bit more openly. But already it didn't matter. We actually beat the communication director with our story that exposed it all. Because I'm not playing games. I don't have time.
Do you know what the larger question is? And pardon me for stepping on your words there. If you didn't write the story, I mean, maybe they would have gotten pressure the way they did here in New Rochelle to close the rest of the schools. But had you not discovered that in your research, in your investigation, would the schools still be open today or tomorrow, Monday? We don't know.
It might be. I'm not sure. I mean, that's a call that they had to make. The real issue is that a lot of schools are being cleaned up. Yonkers is as well, but they've been taking it very lackadaisically. They haven't been telling anybody what's going on. People are getting infected. We had only yesterday night we found out that one of our firefighters wasn't feeling well, and he's checked in, and they're going to find out if he's got some disease or not. But the point is, you can't hide this stuff. And then talking about hiding, it was written on the 10th of March, which I only got yesterday. But so what the letter on the 10th of March, which was written by Dr. Quezada, superintendent of schools, was that he's aware of 6 people who may have been near someone, so it may have been, or potentially exposed to someone who had the coronavirus. But they didn't know. But they had no students in the schools that were infected. Well, and if you go everywhere else, if you think about it, how come we don't know where these kids went, who these kids were next to, or that might have been infected? Why don't we know that from the school? Well, they say that there are all kinds of laws, but if you listen to the governor tells you, well, we got cases here, we got cases there, we're closing that school somewhere else, and so on and so forth. How come we're kept in the dark in Yonkers? Because that's the culture in Yonkers. Keep everybody unaware, and so everybody will be calm, and there's nothing to be calm about, but not certainly to be hysterical.
Geez,
this thing will go away.
You should not have had, in my view, to do this story to make them act.
I should not have done what.
No, you should. It should not have been necessary for your story to make them act. They should have done it nonetheless. All right. What else? What else is going on?
That's with everything they do. Unless they get prodded, they don't tell anybody anything. I never got a press release of any kind. There were people that were actually invited to this press conference that was held on Thursday, and I wasn't invited. And don't get me wrong, Bob, I'm on radio. I'm on your show today, but I'm always on radio every day from 10 o'clock till 12. I wouldn't have been able to make it, but at least the courtesy of a notice.
Right.
So rather they think. The thing that's really interesting, they try to keep me out of it, and yet I'm the first one with the news before anybody else.
Well,
News. It doesn't matter if it's News 12, doesn't matter if it's CBS. The point is, I got my hand on the pulse, and they resent it. Because the person says, how the hell did he find out?
Let me remind people of who you are and what you do. He's the managing editor and publisher of the Yonkers Tribune. It's been around for many, many years. He's been running it for many years, and he also has a daily radio show, I believe, on Blog Talk Radio called On the Level from 10 to 12 every day. Right. Now, I had asked you about something. I was talking to a colleague from Yonkers, Adele from Hoosler, and he was mentioning to me he's always concerned about police overtime. You're working on other stuff. What's the top of your queue, and how come the overtime is so much in that city?
Well, the reason for the overtime is because you have to recognize how the overtime is designated. The last police commissioner, Charles Gardner, he came onto the scene where the overtime was permitted to be as much as 60 hours every 2 weeks. The people who got overtime of as much as 60 hours every 2 weeks were the chosen insiders that belonged to the Yonkers Police Benevolent Association insiders. They were part of the trustees. They were the chosen ones. Everybody else was riffraff, got nothing. So the point is, it created this animosity within the department, number one. And then in last year's process for the budget hearing, the police commissioner at that time, Gardner, simply said he would prefer that, and there is no guarantee to overtime, is what he emphasized, but when we do give overtime, it should not exceed 40 hours every 2 weeks. Well, the person in charge is not the police commissioner at that time or even now. The person in charge is the police chief, which is one step below the police commissioner, and he was the one that designated the amount of overtime. So where are we now? We're having people getting 59, 60 hours, including the present police commissioner Mueller, whose own brother, Mike, the last 2 weeks that he was working, he got 59 hours of overtime.
Wow.
So they are breaking the budget. But then, only of late, and it hasn't even come out, and this is a breaking news story for you. The bottom line is that they are now creating circumstances where the chosen few are going to have a pay increase, but it will be designated at a much higher level than they presently would earn. So they don't need those 60 hours overtime or 40 hours overtime, because we're back at 60 hours. We never actually reduced it to 40, but it sounded good. So the point is, instead of earning maybe $180,000, $200,000, now they're going to put everyone at a flat rate for the insiders, $240,000, $250,000. So even though it doesn't look like they're getting paid more and there is no overtime, it will reduce the overtime ledger, but in reality, we're paying more. And already from the last year budget that was approved, we are already blown through $1.5 million beyond what we designated is what we had allocated for it. So just goes to show you how stupid and how outrageous that this behavior is. And then they're going to come to the state, and then they're going to come to the taxpayer and say, we expect you to pay more. Why do we have to pay more? Why don't you allocate to appropriately? Everybody gets overtime, but if they need it. More importantly, if you stop paying all these high prices for overtime, then you could hire a cop.
I
instead
remember
of hiring the same person who falls on his feet, eats his donuts all night long because he can't stay up. I love donuts, but you can't keep eating donuts in order to stay awake.
I remember several years ago you doing stories about the fact that when they put their budget together, they knew that they were under budgeting the police because they knew that they just explained it with overtime later, and that's disingenuous.
Correct.
That's disingenuous.
Correct. It's more than disingenuous. I mean, that's a very nice word. It's a big, $50 word, but and I can appreciate it. But you know what? It's deception. It's deception. It's crass. It's ugly. It's inappropriate, and I think it's illegal. But we haven't passed the laws in Yonkers. We're probably the last ones to ever do such a thing. But the point is, we can confine them to a certain place, and overtime is not guaranteed.
No, it is
not. You pay 1.5 times for overtime. Then why don't you hire a cop? Hire a guy on the street. We need them on the street. And you know what? The police commissioner this year, until we wrote about it, decided to drop CompStat. CompStat was a system that was set up years ago.
I'm trying to figure out why they dropped CompStat, because it came in with great fanfare. You reported about it. Why would they drop it? Why would they drop it, Hezzy?
Because they wanted to save money. Because if they save money there, then they don't have to. Then they can have more money to spend for personnel that they want to give extra time to, or to raise the budget. So CompStat costs money. Every police department in the United States has it, of a particular size, and we're supposedly the fourth largest city in the state,
and you're not going to use
the third, and we have over 200,000 people. So how come we don't have CompStat? Well, anyway, I wrote it, and guess what? Next day, it was back on board.
That's our boy. And that man you're listening to is Hezzy Harris, the managing editor, the publisher of the Yonkers Tribune, also radio talk show host on Blog Talk Radio every day from 10 to 12. What else is going on? You always got stuff you're working on, a little pot you're stirring. How's the virus in general affecting Yonkers?
Well, that's another thing. For example, we haven't been told that, I don't know if you need to send out a press release about it, but they keep it quiet when you say people are not shopping, people are not going out, people are not going to restaurants. They're making believe that everything is the same way as it was before this crisis. And it's a question really not of a crisis. It has an overlay of important issues. We have to be aware of them. We have to take precautions. We have to be smart, all kinds of things that are suggested by the CDC. And we're just keeping that away from the city. Turned out last night, a firefighter came down with some symptoms, and he's getting checked out. But the bottom line is they work very closely together, and so he was part of a crew, and maybe the other people will be affected. We don't know, but they don't tell us this. Oh, and then talking about the kids, again, the governor has always advised that if someone was infected, they didn't necessarily name their name, but they would give you the name of the school.
Yes.
But we're not getting that in Yonkers.
I know
Isn't that amazing? Six people
yes.
may have come potentially. That's all. It's just a question of potentially. So, and when they checked with the Westchester County Health Department, they say, well, we got nothing to say. Isn't that sweet?
Wow.
I mean, you know what?
We're
treated like a pariah, and maybe we deserve it.
No, you
but
don't.
The bottom line is they don't have a right to do that.
No, you do not. What the kind of investigative journalism and digging that you do is what keeps government honest. Imagine if you weren't there.
Oh, well, that's what they imagined.
No, they fantasized that you weren't there. That's yes. when I opened this radio station. The first two phone calls I made for guests were you and Bob Cox because of what you do.
Thank you.
And then others of your ilk, our colleagues over at Black Westchester Magazine, John Bailey.
Yes, they're good. Very good. I love John Bailey.
But you and Bob were the first two phone calls I made because someone's got to do that work, and the resources don't exist to do it elsewhere. And the funny thing is, you're the classic struggling, and I talk about, we all know how hard it is to get advertising, struggling ink-stained wretches that do the hard work. And
yeah.
And I'm so proud to have you guys on these broadcasts every week.
Well, thank you. Well, just another thing, the conference day is today with the superintendent of schools. Again, not made announced, no announcement being made, but publicly, and except for last night, yesterday, when I beat pants off with the director of communications by 3 minutes, exposing what she should have exposed the day before. But anyway, the bottom line is that the purpose of this meeting is to talk to the teachers, and what they're trying to do now, which is very, very late. They never had any plans. That's the whole thing. A lot of communities don't have plans, but certainly Yonkers is stellar for not creating a plan. They have no vision at all. So they didn't plan in any way, shape, or form on what they could conceivably do. They said that they would get over it. It doesn't work that way. So what they're doing is they're having the meeting today with the teachers, and they want to try to work out a situation where the teachers will work online, at home, telecommuting, but they have a problem. And that problem is that a lot of students don't have Wi-Fi and don't have computer access.
Yeah. I understand
I've been screaming about this for years.
They should have been buying some inexpensive tablets or gotten a grant for tablets. They probably could have got that.
Exactly. You could buy tablets today for $100, like Chrome-type tablets that are connected to Wi-Fi. So the whole point of it is that if you can buy it for $100 now, retail, then I'm sure you can get it for $50 or even $75 or even $100. But instead of getting a Chrome or a tablet, doesn't have to be an iPad Pro or something like that. We don't have to go for $1,500. We could spend maybe $100. That's a big saving.
You can get them in bulk, and I bet you the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation would write them a check in 5 minutes or something like that.
Except they're too stupid. You know why? Because they're connected. They're connected to the people who publish books in print. No one in his right mind needs to get a book. Not today, when everything is computerized.
Well, some of us.
And the point is, it's cheaper to give away a free tablet to give them even Wi-Fi, and even Wi-Fi.
It's cheaper than 3 books. It's true. Yeah.
Sorry?
I'm thinking of 3 books. The average price now $27, $28. 3 books, and you got it all covered. The cost of 3 books.
But these kids are, and think about also the deleterious aspect of them dragging all that weight on their back. Did you ever see some 50-pound-year-old kids with probably 100 pounds on their back?
You know, I
You know
haven't
what that
even
does
thought
to
about
them?
it. Do you know what? What's that old
What?
line? You know, you're pretty smart. Check out the big brain on Hezzy. Listen, we got to go. Thank you very much. Next week, we get you for even longer. Hezzy Harris, everyone, listen to him at 10 o'clock. What are you doing at 10 o'clock?
Let's see. We're talking to Ossining Mayor Victoria Garrity. She is absolutely stellar. I'm beside myself because she's unfortunately not going to run for another term.
Wow.
3 terms, 6 years total. She walks on water as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that's Hezzy Harris.
One of 3.
On the level, 10 o'clock. And remember, go on to his news site, okay? The Yonkers Tribune. Thank you very much, Hezzy.
Thank you so much.
Take
Be well.
care. Another look at the weather. I got a couple of questions for Jake. We're going to grab him back to the microphone, try to get him more involved in some of the politics, too. He'll hate you all. All righty, where the hell did I put my weather? It is 46 degrees now. It's going to get up to 67. The rain is abated already. That's good news because it's going to warm up today and we'll have sunshine. You'll notice Jake's in a T-shirt and I just took off my jacket because yesterday was freezing in here and I put up the heat. Now I got to lower it again. But that's good news for you because it'll be 67 this afternoon. Tonight, clear skies, getting down to 37. Tomorrow, clear skies, but chilling a bit, down to 52. Sunday, chilling a little more, down to 48, but sunny. And then the overnight will be 28 degrees. And the weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. And it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And the bottom of the hour, as we head there, is going to be brought to you by Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Con, Dominic's Fine Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. And next week, we will be joined by our friends at Beachmont, the Beachmont Tavern here in New Rochelle. They say they have the best wings. I say they have the best burgers. We'll probably have, myself and Jake will have an eat-off. You can have burgers or what do you prefer? Now you go there. In fact, you did a little bit of leading there.
I think those are the best wings in Westchester.
Really? You think they are, huh?
I'm from upstate. The wings upstate are much better, but Beachmont is the best Westchester wings.
The wings upstate are better? I didn't know that. Yeah, what makes it, because is that where the term buffalo wings comes from, Buffalo? Okay, well, I get that. And that's of course, Central New York, and that's Western New York. But he's got the best here in the city, in the metropolitan
Westchester,
area.
yeah.
Now, have you yet? Now, I know I'm the only person that eats a burger like this. People think a burger today has to be piled with 87 things. But I'm the man. You give me the burger. You make it well done. I'm real close to that. It's still a little juicy. You give me some sauteed onions, a nice bun, and I'm as happy as a clam. And they're the best over there. They're just absolutely. It's not, when you go to a fast food joint, they're okay, but it's a factory.
My wife and I are creatures of habit, so every time we go there, we get the wings and the pretzel. They have nice big pretzel rods that are.
Oh yes,
you tried those.
They are good. And you put a little mustard on those. By the way, and you brought them in. Was the segment that you produced yesterday, and that I had a ball.
Oh,
with
I
those
can't.
guys.
I'm going there St. Patrick's Day for that.
I had a
Cabbage,
ball with the Raymond guys.
corned beef, cabbage, ramen. I can't wait to try that. I'm getting that. And he said come early because it'll be sold out on Tuesday.
That's amazing. And I didn't know you could do so many things with oxtail. Obviously, it's very good. People. Have you ever had it?
Never, but I looked at their menu and it's a lot of oxtail.
A lot of oxtail. I guess there are a lot of steers running around without tails.
Probably.
I don't understand it. Now, I wanted to go back to something that you said when we had Stephen on, and then we had to get to that breaking story. Isn't that amazing that if Hezzy didn't write, because he calls last night, and he's imagined this, there's 6 students, but they won't, and I don't want their names. I'm going to protect them, but I want to know the schools. So he says, well, I'm running with the story. And sure enough, they closed the schools. That shouldn't be necessary. Am I crazy? What do you make
My
of that?
wife's schools just was canceled, and I know a lot of parents are upset.
Well,
That they're not
because the
going to get
kids
the
would be home.
proper, and they're not going to get the proper education. There's not really a timetable, but better to be safe than sorry. That's
Now,
what I say.
Does your wife still have to go in, or will she be
She's
home
today.
annoying you?
She'll be home to annoy me.
I hope she's probably listening too. I don't know why I got myself and you in this trouble. All right, back before your eyes lit up when you talked about the football draft, because a lot of people do care about that, and that is something we probably should keep our camera on, if you will. What do you think? How is it shaping up? What are the Giants looking for? What are the Jets looking for?
I think the Giants, they have the number 4 pick. I think they're going to trade the 4 pick and just load up on picks throughout the draft. I think they have a lot of holes they need to fill. Jets, there's a lot of good wide receivers in this draft. There's 3 potentially game breakers. And I think if the Jets give Darnold a good wide receiver, that could be something really interesting in the years to come.
Now, you mentioned Darnold, and I'm glad you did, because, and I'm not a Jet fan, but I have a certain amount of confidence with him and him. I think that if they surround him with the right pieces, he can do really well. Now, it's not so much the play, although he turned into a turnover magician. I don't get the sense that the Giant hierarchy is really sold on Daniel Jones. Is that fair?
Didn't sound like it, but I think their new coach, I think he's just trying to be a Bill Belichick cover band. All of his answers were straight out of the Bill Belichick, playbook on how he was dealing with the media, how he didn't want to really endorse his quarterback yet.
Well, but you think he's being cool, but I'm not just sure I've ever really heard anybody say, this guy can take us. Now, what are his strengths?
Jones?
You follow the game. Like I could tell, if you asked me about Arturi Panarin, I could tell you what his strengths are for people who might doubt him. But what are his strengths?
Seems like he's
for the
smart.
uninitiated?
He's a smart kid, athletic. He just turns the ball over way too much. That can be fixed, I would assume, I think.
Well, it all depends on why he's doing it. Isn't he the one guy that came in one day and said he saw ghosts? And we know what that is in hockey. It's like you think somebody's going to hit you and they're not really there. Okay, and so we have drills. At least I've constructed drills to make players get over that. But do they do that in football? I don't even know.
Yeah, of course.
Because that's why you turn the ball over or give the puck up too much. And it's not about a fear of being hit. It's about a fear of having the ball taken or the puck taken from you that you do it. Because I don't think he's as good as Darnold.
No, I don't believe so either. I think he could be a good starting quarterback. He just has a long ways to go.
Can he win a Super Bowl?
Sure.
Is good enough to? Is it fair enough to say that any competent quarterback who starts in a major league team can win a Super Bowl with the right people surrounding him?
The San Francisco quarterback, I'm not sold that he's anything special, and he almost won a Super Bowl. He had a nice defense. Yeah. Nice defense. Good line. Good running game.
Another thing. See, we still have football alive over the draft coming up. How does a guy like Fitzgerald, or Fitzpatrick, I think his name is, have a 15-year career as a backup? That's impressive. He must be, in hockey and baseball, they have these guys that are, they're referred to as 4A. In other words, they're better than AAA, but they can't stick in the majors. Is that what he kind of is?
Well, first and foremost, he's very smart. He's
very
an
smart.
Ivy League.
Ivy League guy.
Yeah. And obviously, he's very talented. I mean, he's got enough talent.
Yeah, he does, but he sticks. But
he'll be a great coach. I'm sure he'll end up as a coach one day.
And he makes a couple of million a year over all these years, so he's built a nice career.
I think he makes probably $8 million a year.
Well, that's right, because he had that contract with the Jets when he held out. He played a couple. He interests me. Guys like that interest me. It must be so frustrating. Although he did have 14 years, you see it in baseball where guys up and down and up and down, and they're usually guys that play out of position, like a first baseman who only hits singles. He may hit 350 and could hit in the majors, but they have no regard for him. I remember, now I don't know if you remember, do you remember Rod Carew?
Yeah, sure.
I don't think there has been a more underrated player in the history of baseball.
Yeah, but where would Rod Carew be in today's game?
Oh, gazillions. But the thing is that because he didn't hit home runs, and he used to hit 300, but he made them. But there are guys in the minors like that who can't field. So they put him at first base, but they don't hit home runs, and that's just not a position they need to fill. It's really interesting. And in hockey, you get a guy who could skate like the wind, has bad hands, or has great hands. He could score, but he can't go up and down with the fast guys. Really, I just find that stuff fascinating. Thanks, because you're gonna have to carry us with this football stuff because I don't know enough. Jake Schaefer, everybody. The man on the other line is most likely he uses a different clock than we do, and I probably have the lines busy. Ought to be Al Tarantino. He is your city councilman here in New Rochelle from District 2. Good morning, sir.
No, it's Anthony.
Anthony, what's up?
I wanted to weigh in on Darno
Please
being able
do.
to.
Yeah, I'm glad you called. Jake, come back. This is about your hit. Go ahead. It wasn't Mr. Tarantino, so he's past the sell-by date. He's probably busy.
Referring to Darno being able to taught not to turn over the ball as much.
Yes.
I think the only thing that you can help him with is probably reading defenses better. But as far as actually him turning the ball over, one thing the good quarterbacks have and the great quarterbacks command is that sixth sense where they just get the pass off before they're hit, or they just shuffle it off or hand it off before they're in the grasp of that defensive lineman. It's not something they see. It's something they can not even feel, but they actually sense. And, that's what I think he's missing. Now, I don't believe that can be taught. You can lower his turnover rate, but I don't think he's ever going to be in the. That's
interesting.
You're talking about Jones, right?
You meant Jones, yeah, but whomever it may be. Now, you played the game, Jake. It can, like in hockey, I used to have this drill. Occasionally, I'd have a center, and it wasn't. Again, it's not that they're timid, but the game's fast, and you get like shy. So I would move them to wing for a while, because then you're forced to work the boards.
I played wide receiver, and I was terrified going over the middle.
Oh, you must have been
every single time.
Did you think you dropped balls because of it?
Sure.
Anthony, now could you? What did they tell you? You just got to man up, get better at it.
Yeah, that's what you. He has to realize. Listen, he can sharpen his skills reading defenses. Okay, he can sharpen his skills as far as the amount of time it takes him to drop back and get a pass off. But even getting a pass off, again, that demands you reading the defense correctly and not throwing into it, but finding that sweet spot in the defense.
I guess it almost helps to be bred. Like Manning was always good. Eli, you'd see him to throw the ball and then get smackarooed. You know what's it's interesting? Anthony, did you play? You seem to have a lot of insight into this. So you just
I played. I didn't last long. We were playing Mount Vernon, and after we were beating them, we ran a sweep, which I was the pulling guard, and about 30 seconds after the play was whistled dead, I got whistled right in the middle of my back with the helmet.
Oh, my God.
So, needless to say, I grabbed mine by the face mask and took it into my own hands.
Oh. Well, you say something interesting about a sixth sense. Now, you both know that I've been playing now 50, 60 years. I have never, and this is relatively speaking, of course, then I was 50 years and a really very good player. Now I'm adequate, if that. But I have never been as good a hockey player since the day I put on a helmet, all things being equal. For whatever reason, that in those kinds of games, I lost that sixth sense when I put on a helmet. And it's a game best played feral, if you know what I mean. Like you go into the corner, guys running at you. When your helmet, your need to protect yourself and be aggressive is much more prominent with no helmet. At least because I didn't grow up with it. I've never been the same.
Well, I think that's because you have a greater field of view. Your hearing is easier, is more sensitive to what's happening around you and coming towards you.
Yep.
Hearing that blade hit the ice, when you hear that. I'm sure when you hear that blade hit the ice within, I'll say a 10-foot radius, if it's coming at you, going away from you.
Yeah.
You can almost sense if it's a defenseman lining you up, or one of your men's going towards the net, waiting for you to throw it out front.
And it even affects your moves, like a guy, you'd be coming in on a guy, and if he puts his stick to the left, your body twitches to the right, or vice versa. Now it just stays stationary.
And I'm sure there's a different sound between someone jamming their blades to stop short or taking off
and
or
on roller
making
skates
a cut.
too. Yeah, roller skates are even more quiet now because they have these real high-tech wheels.
I was a big roller skater. I played roller hockey,
so
to be
do
honest
I. Yeah,
with you.
me too. I play a lot of it still now.
No, you play inline. I played roller.
No, I still wear quads a lot. No,
okay.
In fact, who I played with a couple of weeks ago? Roy, who used to be on WVOX a lot. Roy has a group of people that play down in Waterbury, and occasionally he and I go and play with some of the guys there, and that's straight up roller hockey. It's a lot of fun.
Aside from sports for a second, we used to put on a roller skating show at the Boys and Girls Club.
You're
at Feeney
serious?
And we used to have anywhere from 75 to 150 kids on the floor at any given show. We would have 2 weekends, 3 performances each weekend. We would be sold out every performance, 400 people. We couldn't pack them in the gym anymore after setting up scenery and having an actual place to skate. Kids doing marches, dances, and everything else.
Now, I'm begging you to tell me that you danced on skates.
I did.
Begging.
I did. You would be surprised
Jake.
how fluid I was on skates.
Actually, no, I
costume?
wouldn't be surprised. See, it's not the fluid on skates. I skate better than I roller skate and inline skate better than I walk.
No, when I say fluid, I mean to music.
No, but that's the point I'm getting at. So, did you like throw your hands in the air and shuffle?
Yeah, absolutely. Cross my legs, spin around.
This is great.
Yep, absolutely.
Joe,
Do the old two-step with the girl on my side. Absolutely.
Oh man, I love a little disco music playing. I knew
that
this was going to be
that
a
was
good.
Absolutely. We did the Spirit of '76.
You know what?
We've done a lot of shows, Bob. You know.
I believe you. No. See,
it's a time past, but let me tell you. You want to talk about sense of community?
Yeah, it was great. That's what we're hoping. We mentioned it earlier. We were talking about it earlier, and you did too. Vince did. Maybe people will do more of those things, but now you can't get too many together in one place.
We had to get the fire department to look the other way on over occupancy.
I bet you did. Where was it? Which building was it?
Feeney Park.
Right there. Yeah,
right there in Feeney Park in the gym. That gymnasium was built by the WPA.
Yeah. By the way, roller skating is still great on a wooden floor. Absolutely, with the right skates, and it's very, very fast. I played it's 20 years ago now, but there was a rink in this place in New Jersey that had like an old slick basketball floor. Man, I could fly on that thing.
Yeah, it was the shortboard floor, and you had to be careful when the weather was damp because it would buckle.
Oh man, well I used to play in this great roller rink in Brooklyn.
That's why they went to parquet,
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, because parquet is laid in different angles, so when the floor expands, it's not only in one direction.
Okay, so it's not just margin parquet.
Right. When you have short rows going across, those rows individually can warp as opposed to the next rows or adjoining rows. Whereas if it's parquet, one's laid up against the other. It takes a lot more moisture to raise that floor up.
Jake, do you skate?
I'm terrible at it.
Terrible. All kinds, roller, ice, blades,
all
everything.
Kinds, terrible.
Ice skating, I couldn't do. I didn't have the ankles for ice skating.
Yeah, no, I'll skate on anything, and but my favorite's probably still just like in my very serious games, I wear quads most of the time. There's still a lot of guys in this league. League, we have about 30% of the guys that are high-level players still wear quads. You'd be shocked, Anthony.
If you get a chance, go to my Facebook page. Go back about a year or so, and you'll see that I had about a 3 or 4 week period where I posted all of the old pictures of the kids for the kids that are now adults and have their own kids and grandkids.
Will we see you with a Tony Munaro kind of white suit going?
No, at that point, I was running. I was running the shows, not participating.
Oh God, I got to see that. Hey, well, before you go, you mentioned the Boys and Girls Club. Great reputation. Great.
In New Rochelle, it was an unbelievable place. I can tell you that Mr. Inuzzi from the Feeney Park, now Mascaro Boys and Girls Club, is one of my neighborhood girls, the woman who used to live in my neighborhood. We grew up together on Madeline Avenue, son.
Uh-huh.
So the tradition of the West End and generations, giving back continues.
Well, that's a good thing. Don't mind me. I'm just texting my next guest who wants to know when to come on. So, now you just called. Okay, I got it. 999. Yeah. I'm losing my mind, Anthony. It's not easy. But yeah,
I've known that for a long time.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but great stuff about that Boys and Girls Club. You talk about it. Lou Felicione talks about it. Al Tarantino. You guys had a wonderful kid life over here in New York.
Bob, let me tell you something. I've told you before, my father passed away at the age of 39.
Yeah, God
I really don't remember him well. Uh-huh. And I will honestly say that from the age of 13 on, I probably slept more nights in the Boys and Girls Club than I did at home.
I bet.
We had that type of leadership. Hank DeClemente, Gus Mascaro. Gus Mascaro was the executive director. He was the largest accounts payable when he passed.
No kidding.
For not taking salary.
Wow. God bless him. Hey, listen, thanks very much. This was a nice trip down what you used to do. Thank you, Anthony.
You got it.
And thank you, Jake. We're going to be getting Dr. Sternberg coming on in just a minute. Jake, we got to get you up on skates, Jake.
Should start skating. Probably a lot safer to skate to work.
Well, yeah, but we probably put you on
train.
inlines. But the biggest thing, every kind of skating you do, the most important thing is as soon as you get on them is to start doing figure eights.
I just don't think my ankles are strong enough.
Well, then go use quads. These, we know the regular skate. We have like the quads I own cost $450 to make. I mean, because they're ice boots, but they're affixed to a good skate. But use quads. But you'd be surprised. The new inline skates, they really hold your ankle pretty firm. But the thing is, you do figure eights because it solves every problem. You eventually learn how to stop because of it, and you can always turn out of any crisis. And then just throwing yourself down like an octopus, you can do that too. But I'd rather skate than walk if I could.
Yeah.
It's and I'm just thankful that at this age, I still can.
I like my bike. I'm excited to start going for bike rides.
Bikes are great. Bikes are actually great. Turn this off. Yeah, I got to get to the doctor. All righty. We're going to do a quick, we'll get to our 9 o'clock guest a little later than expected, too. We're going to do a quick weather report, and then we'll talk with Dr. Victor Sternberg. We weren't sure who was calling who today, and that was on me. 46, raining. The rain's going to abate, and you'll be up to 67, maybe even 70 today. We will have sunshine this afternoon. More sunshine. Not sunshine tonight, but clear skies. And those clear skies will bring with it 27 or 37 degrees. Tomorrow, another nice day, but the temperature only 52. And then on into Sunday, another nice day again, but only a high of 48. And at night, 28 degrees. And the weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. And it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.org. And the man we love to love around these parts, we've been on the radio together for many years. You know him from his years as the host of Politics in Your Health, starring Dr. Victor Sternberg, a periodontist by trade, but prevention, your general health are the things he cares most about. We got to him late, but we'll keep him a little later if he doesn't have to run to teaching. Please welcome Dr. Victor Sternberg. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning, Bob. In the words of the great Chinese philosopher, we live in interesting times.
We live in very interesting times, my friend, and I'm going to come straight from the top without a specific question. What is your reaction to all that you're seeing and all that you're reading now as a healer, as a professional who understands medicine and politics, open-ended? What is your reaction to this? What are we doing right? What do you think we ought to do better?
That's a loaded question. So
Yes, it is.
let me just begin with let me digress before I say that
Sure.
and just tell you something that's very disturbing. I don't know if you know, Bob, that China produces 90% of our antibiotics. They produce 70% of our Tylenol, and they produce some medications, the products that are used in drugs we're treating this virus with right now in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
China's been making noise about, well, you guys are calling it the China virus. Maybe we'll cut you out of the supply chain or stop supplying this.
Uh-huh.
Do you have any idea? I mean, I had no idea that our manufacturing of medications is so dependent upon China. And this creates a serious question about our viability to deal with some issues, because we have sent the manufacturing abroad to a country that's not our friend and has undue control of outcomes of healthcare in this country. I find this, when I read this, it blew me away. And it all is part of this conundrum of, American preparedness. We have developed, and we've talked about this before, Bob, we have the ability to end the world in about 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
We've spent enough money on trillions of dollars on nuclear weapons that can end the world, that if we ever use them, we're all dead. Okay. We are the least prepared of many of the nations to deal with this virus.
Mm-hmm.
We had plenty of warning ahead of time. There
Did
was
we?
Plenty of people. Well, once this thing broke out in China, my friend, the thoughts that it was going to stay in China were probably wistful thinking.
I was going to say, were they wistful thinking? But what would a Fauci have said had it not been, and this is not about Democrats or Republicans, had it not been, if it didn't have the seal, if you will, of political concerns, what would Fauci have done 6 months ago?
He would have probably, as soon as it broke out, ordered the immediate manufacture or importing from the World Health Organization testing kits as soon as we knew we could test. Immediately, because we have tested, I think, about 1,500 people as of a day or two ago, and in Italy they test 10,000 a day. I think in Korea it's 7,000 a day, and the lack of testing creates a lot of issues. Because people are walking around with this virus, they don't know it.
Well, that's one of the things we keep reading is that we need to test people that either don't have the virus or don't show symptoms. We need to have more testing. Now, here in New Rochelle, they're actually opening up a drive-through testing site next week, very similar to the type they have in South Korea right now.
Right, and so I get back to the issue of, the presidential denial of the reality of this. And the political divide is our greatest weakness in dealing with any issue. When people think this is a hoax or this is hysteria put by a party to bring down a president, when that kind of thinking interjects into healthcare, we have a serious distortion in the American mind for many people. I don't know where this is going to end. I listen to everybody. I hear dire predictions of 100 million people. One of the issues we're going to have, Bob, is we do not have the facilities to treat that number of people.
We talked about this a bit yesterday, and in the entirety of this prospective group of people who will get the virus. If we use it as 100%, the biggest concern is the 20% or 10% that are vulnerable because of age and or pre-existing conditions. If the greater number increases, that subset will overwhelm our medical establishment. Is that the thinking? And that's
the fear? That's the fear. I think we've got 60,000 critical units, beds that can care for critical patients in the whole United States. Okay. Now, we only have so many respirators to keep people alive. There's a good article by Rahm Emanuel, Zeke Emanuel, who used to be the head of was a physician, very involved with the Affordable Care Act.
The brother of Rahm Emanuel, yes.
Right. He wrote an article about some realities about who we treat and who we don't treat. When a system is overwhelmed by sick people, you have to make decisions because you don't have the facilities to save them all. So you have to do what's called triage.
Yep.
You decide the ones that can live, and you treat them. It will not be first come, first serve. If you have somebody that's extremely ill, and you're going to spend tremendous resources and time trying to save that person, and you've got some other people, 5 to 10 people who are not as ill but could become so, you may have to let the person who's extremely ill not get treated initially. And that's a sad fact of making rationing health care. And that's what's done in medical care in the battlefield when people come in with wounds. The one who's going to die, they don't treat. The one who may have a chance, they'll treat first.
Yes.
And we may face that draconian idea that our doctors people are going to bring family members in, and they'll be put on a stretcher to die. And this is not cruelty. This is a reality.
But it is
overwhelm the system.
And unfortunately, I hope we don't have any Sarah Palins popping out and talking about death panels and stuff and making it into a political issue.
We have to keep the politicians out of this decision making. Dr. Fauci and people like him, like Emanuel. We have to, when you fight a war, you don't send the congressman in to decide which battle to fight and how to fight it. You call generals in.
No.
This is a war that has to be fought by the medical generals.
I just want to remind people that voice you hear, pardon me for interrupting, Doctor, is Dr. Victor Sternberg, the longtime host of Politics in Your Health, heard on several radio stations here in this region over the years. That show will be back when he has a little more time, but he's with us each and every Friday for 30 minutes at least. Dr. Sternberg, has it affected your practice? And
This is an existential issue I was going to bring up. First of all, some people are afraid to go to the dentist now because they fear that the intimate contact with the health professionals are only a few inches away from their face might get them sick. So what that forces some of us to do, and I've done that, I've been tested just to make sure I do not have the virus.
Mm-hmm.
I recently did that, and I insisted upon it because they were not going to test me because I didn't have the.
Actually,
I had a little money.
You're in greater risk than they are.
That's right. The danger is to me because I am wearing a mask.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wearing gowns, but I have instruments in my hand that cause an aerosol. So all of the bacteria in their mouth, as I use drills or instruments that have air,
that spray
will come
is all
floating
up.
right back into my face and filling my room up. So I am at risk. They are not, because my staff is healthy. I've been tested. We've monitored ourselves. We're covered up, and we are very careful that anybody has a cold, we have any symptoms, they don't come to work. But I don't know if the patient sitting in my dental chair, who might have been exposed, has no symptoms, may infect me and my staff. So this is not a as a healthcare professional. In fact, look what's happening in Italy and other countries. The number of healthcare professionals getting sick is overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
This creates another conundrum. You're putting doctors and policemen and firemen and ambulance drivers and nurses all at risk, high risk, because they're with these people all day long.
Doctor, why do you think, one of the things in covering this story we've learned is that the country that has handled this the best by far is South Korea. And a lot had to do with their ability to erect rather quickly the ability to test, which means they've done the forework. They've done the foreplay.
That's right.
But why? Look, it's a much smaller country, but it's a very advanced country as we are. Why did they get it right and we didn't?
Well, first of all, they were probably much more concerned day one. They literally are one border away, North Korea, from China. So their contacts are more intense with the Chinese. Although I must say that the number of Chinese, there's a question someone brought up to me that the incidence of the Italian epidemic, that many Chinese people left China as soon as this thing broke out in China, and many of them were workers in Italy, and they brought a lot of infected people from China to Italy.
Makes sense.
That caused the incredible surge in this virus in Italy. It was not brought. It was brought in by people coming from China. So, look, if you know anything about South Korea, they're extremely disciplined,
mm-hmm.
and they follow the rules. They're a country. Look, we're a country of 350 million approximately. Everybody has his own opinion and wants to do what he wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
One of the beauties of America is that our freedom to choose is a wonderful thing. That's why we came here. In times of emergency, however, a more authoritarian or a population that follows the rules better, a population that does what they're supposed to do when the government tells them, is going to respond much better than when we have people in the top range of government telling us it's not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Or why should I stop working? Why should I give up my income because I might get sick? Why should I be tested? I'll tell you an interesting story. When I wanted to be tested just to make sure,
mm-hmm.
because indirectly one of my patients a week before told me, a week after he was in my office, that his wife had been exposed.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I'm going to go get it. You know that I had made multiple calls to several health centers. They would not see me. They said that I had no symptoms. I said, well, someone I know exposed me up 10 days ago, and his wife got sick. I want to make sure. I had to go to the emergency room and sit there and tell them, listen, I might have been exposed, but I am in a critical healthcare profession, and I must be sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to beg them. I sat there for 2 hours in isolation. I said, listen, I don't know what you have to do. You're going to break the rules. Get me tested.
Yeah.
On a Sunday morning, I didn't get out of there until 4 o'clock in the afternoon from 11 in the morning to get tested, and I had to make a stink. That should not be.
No.
That kind of experience that's an example of what's happened in our country.
Doctor, I almost don't know what to say about it. Why would they not test a medical professional? Why would they not do that?
Bob, they don't have enough tests. How's that? When there was only 1,500 people tested as of a day or two ago. They don't have enough tests. They lied to you about the availability of tests because they got caught with their pants down.
Well, Fauci said today that he'll have that they should have that problem fixed by next week. I'm just amazed at it.
Okay. I mean, Bob, come on. This virus began in January. seriously in the month of January in China. The alarm bell. Let me tell you something, Bob. If there was a military threat or a huge economic threat that came up in January, all the bells would be ringing in Washington. But you know what? It gets back to this our view, our American view of being proactive versus reactive. We can't solve problems because of the politicalization of every issue. So instead of rallying around each other, we got the Dems on one side, the Republicans on the other side. We got the media on the left and the right screaming it's a hoax or that this is the end of the world, and we have a president that's not sure this is real. How can that country deal with this immediately? You tell me.
Well, let's. I don't know. And again, Dr. Victor Sternberg is our guest. Doctor, we saw some indications, and I say indications. I don't think that it's confirmed yet, but that China's numbers of people both having the disease and dying, and similarly in South Korea, that those numbers have looked like they may have peaked. How much of that is good news? And of course, we'd have to go through that same evolution here, will we not?
Yeah, that is good news, but it may be a function of their isolation. They went to total lockdown in the country much more than we did, and remember ours. That may be that this virus is controllable with isolation and didn't spread to the rest of the Chinese population. It only affected 80,000 out of 1.5 billion. So there was not the center didn't held, and it may be that this thing will eventually be controlled. Nobody knows the answer, except that we do know that we have no handle on all the exposed people, and we're just beginning to close down our society at this point. So I don't know how it's going to play out, Bob, and God willing, this virus will burn itself out, and we will move on in life and maybe learn a lesson. Because remember, this could have been a much more fatal virus. We were just,
that's my next question. Will we learn a lesson? Will it affect healthcare? Will it affect preparedness?
I'm not sure. Bob, human nature is we tend to revert back to normal. For a while, we'll be concerned about it. We will. After 9/11, we were very vigilant. We were very united as a nation. We put things in effect. I'm not sure whether we have the staying power to disrupt our society and change the rules. I'm not sure, Bob.
Because one of the
America's.
Go ahead. I'm
worried about it.
No, because one of the things that I'm concerned about is how we're going to pay for all of this. And people without insurance avoid going to the doctor because they can't afford it. They're not even going to want to be tested.
Yeah, well, I think they just announced all tests will be free.
Well, that's
number
good.
one. That was a big step. But let's take the scenario that you don't have. You have a $1,000, $2,000 deductible, $5,000 deductible, and you're having symptoms, okay? And you go to the hospital here in Westchester. You now have an enormous bill. You may not want to go. You have a fever. You're not going to be tested because you are worried about who's going to pay the medical bill.
Well, yeah, it's a huge problem.
I mean, these kind of things bring up the issue of the availability of some way for every American to get adequate health care, whether they can afford it or not. And in this situation, we may have to, in an epidemic, there should maybe be no cost for health care for those people being treated and tested. We cannot put a price tag on keeping people out of the hospital.
It certainly is a paradox. I'm wondering if the insurance companies are going to get a black eye as a result of this.
Well, if a significant number of people, don't get the care they need because of money, it'll make it clearer. It'll draw the lines differently than they were before. Because this is not a disease. If you don't go to the doctor, Bob, because you can't afford it, then you're going to affect somebody else. This won't just be Bob Marrone's disease. This may be your significant other. It may be your family member. It may be your best friend. It may be your mother. So the fact that you're not being treated and isolated, this is not just you having diabetes. This is you're a threat to society, not just a threat to yourself.
Absolutely. I can't help but think, doctor, quite frankly, that doing what you do and other doctors, you're at significant risk. You probably have odds that favor you contracting the virus.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Because how many people sit in your chair, come into your office every day?
Probably 30 people.
30 people. What are the odds of those and so and you're 4.5 days a week? You're talking.
I'm 4 days a week.
Yeah.
4 days a week, and I go to a dental school filled with people, with hundreds of people, with students and faculty and patients all in one big room with all these drills. Not only that, all these drills are running.
All these drills and the aerosol coming from them.
Right.
My goodness.
I mean, these are not minor issues that we have not addressed. And so, I'm worried, but I'm hopeful this will burn itself out. But Bob, you know what? If anybody knew that for sure, every time, remember when it went up to 15 cases, it was just the president blew it off, and then it's 100. It seems that now it's up to 1,600, rapidly going up. I don't know how this is going to play. And the other piece of it, Bob, is the economic.
The economic is going to be huge. It's going to be a huge dent.
I think the economic outcome effect of this will supersede the number of fatalities in terms of the tragedies we'll have, because you're closing down. Who's going to pay all these people that work for the arenas, for the colleges? Who's going to pay? They get paid every day. They don't have contracts like teachers do.
They're not salaried.
NFL players or basketball players, they don't have a salary that's guaranteed. No work, no pay.
Although I'd like to look at a lot of contracts that may have a provision for an act of God, which is what this legally would be considered.
Maybe. And the government.
And the government or war. Go ahead, Doctor.
One other thing I want to, just as a sidebar, I was going to bring this up, not specifically to speak of the virus, about healthcare, two healthcare issues that crossed my desk. Patient was in yesterday, so I tell my patients a great source of information. Sometimes you're in the ground, Bob, and you get to hear from people's lives. You get to see what's really going on. So a woman was telling me she's raising a grandson because her daughter is a drug addict, and since at birth she's raised that child, and the mother is not capable, is not yet 15 years later, is not able to take care of the kid. Grandma's taking care of the kid.
Ridiculous.
The kid gets in trouble at school. He goes to a very prestigious high school in Westchester, one of the good schools we have here, and it turns out he's addicted to vaping marijuana. He's not functioning, and he's now in rehab, and a number of his classmates are also in the same situation, 15 and 16-year-old boys in a very prestigious high school locally that are got a hold of marijuana, got a hold of vaping devices, and it magnifies it significantly. And all these things going parallel. Now, let me tell you what could happen. This kid, there is evidence that marijuana smoking does have a negative effect upon lungs in terms of causing some damage. There's a lot of controversy about that, and it just adds to the mix. And one other thing that was fascinating that I read yesterday was that we raised cigarette taxes. I don't know what does a pack of cigarettes cost in New York, Bob?
About $8, $7-8.
I think it's north of that. It's over $10.
Really?
And you know that this is an interesting statistic that people don't get. The taxes are much greater than the actual cost of the box of cigarettes, maybe $2.
Yeah, 60, yeah.
Okay, so 56% is estimated of all cigarettes smoked in New York State are smuggled into New York without taxes on them. New York State.
I'm not surprised.
New York State loses in taxes because of the amount of smuggled cigarettes that are not taxed. $1.5 billion a year. There are states all over this country that cigarettes are smuggled in from out of the country, or they're coming from states like New Hampshire. For every cigarette smoked in New Hampshire, which has a very low tax, the same number of cigarettes are shipped out of New Hampshire, smuggled into the adjoining states, because of the fact that they can sell them for $3 a pack and make $1, whereas there's no tax on it. So, this issue of taxing cigarettes away creates a black market, just like other things in our society. And this smoking issue is going to continue because of that, because at $10, $12 a pack, unless you've got a lot of money or you're really an addict, you're going to have to second thoughts. But if you can buy cigarettes for $3 a pack or $2 a pack on the black market, you'll continue to do so. So, we have these, I've railed for a long time, Bob, about public health.
Yes.
About things like my questions about legalizing marijuana, severe restrictions on vaping, severe restrictions on distributing drugs, doctors writing prescriptions for drugs, or the drug industry filling our market with drugs that have killed hundreds of thousands of people. we have not effectively dealt with already existing preventable healthcare issues of enormity. You have 400,000 people who die of smoking effects. 90,000 people died 2 years ago of using drugs. Mm-hmm. So my concern is that there are too many forces that prevent us from mobilizing as a nation, one nation under God, with a leader who can lead us to do the right thing. The Koreans are much better at following the rules than we are. They're more unified in the sense of believing that every person is important and you better follow. We have trouble with that, Bob.
We have a great
deal. Us in many levels.
Doctor, I want to thank you for making the time for us this morning. Once again, are you teaching today, or has school been canceled?
No, the school. Bob, yesterday. I was leaving for my first vacation in 4 months on a trip to the Galapagos Islands on a cruise out of Ecuador, and I'm sitting here with you because, number one, I don't want to go, and number two, the cruise was canceled. So we are living, and so my time away is going to be spent. I'm going to go back and teach on Wednesday again. I was supposed to be away, but it's affecting all aspects of life. Just think about this: the cruise line, and we prepaid this vacation a long time ago. It was not inexpensive. I took insurance out, and insurance companies have to write a check out for a lot of money to a lot of people. Where's that money going to come from? I mean, you're talking about, all of these continuing connections from illness to money to insurance to loss of income. I am worried if this does not end soon, if this goes on for months, Bob, and escalates, and I don't want to be draconian and say that I worry we'll face more than a recession in this country.
Yeah, it could be very, very serious. Doctor, thank you very much. I'm sorry you didn't go to the Galapagos. That's one of my life's goals. That's on my bucket list to go there.
Well, someday maybe we'll do it together.
We'll do it together.
Okay?
Doctor, thank you very much. Dr. Victor Sternberg, the longtime host of Politics in Your Health on several radio stations here in the region. We're running about 2 minutes late, but that's how we roll sometimes, and we have a crisis. Again, the good doctor will be with us again next week, but we transition now to our long-form segment. But before we do that, let's take a look at the weather. The weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. The temperature is 46. It's raining heavily. Now, we promised you this all morning. It's raining heavily now, but it will cease as we get into the afternoon, and we'll have sunshine. And the temperature, my dear guest, is going to get up to 67, maybe even 70 degrees this afternoon. Tonight, clear skies. The temperature dropping down to 37. Tomorrow, clear skies. The temperature dropping to 52. Again, off of today's 67. Of course, that's better than the night before, but clear skies nonetheless. And on Sunday, high of 48. The overnight low, 28 degrees. And as we get into long form here, we're supported by our new member next week. Joins us, the very fine folks over at the Beachmont Tavern here in New Rochelle. Plug in virtualreality.com. Dominic's Fine Cigars, the law firm of Payne & Con, Aging Issues Management, and as well, the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.org. My next guest, he was with us last week for a little bit, and after learning what he does and what he's about and the changes he made in his life, we said, you've got to come back for a longer visit. He's Dr. Richard Cerulli. He's a producer and a playwright and an author, but what's interesting is he's one of those people who radically changed his career. That's something we here can relate to. He's been a professor at college. He's taught business, but now a playwright, and focusing he's got an organization called the Demitasse Players, as he said, an essentially existential troupe. They do plays here in our region. He writes most of them, and the theme throughout is mental illness, as it affected his life through family members and others. So without further ado, for our long form today on this Friday, March 13th, please welcome Dr. Richard Cerulli. Good morning.
Bob.
Remember, could you get a little closer to the mic? About a fist away is the rule of thumb. There he is. Last week was so revealing that we said we got to have you back, and so we're glad you're here. And could you talk again? I got to do sound check. Talk again. Got to do sound check.
Okay.
Okay, there you are. All right, one more time.
Okay.
No, not good. Go ahead again.
Better yet.
No. What's wrong with your mic? Try now.
How's that?
Much better. All right. I was pressing the wrong button. We call it a sound check in the trade.
I do that quite a bit.
Oh well, yeah, don't we all? We stopped last week. You wrote a book, but I want to go back to the crux after your career, and you had a separate career as an architect, I believe, as well as
working in corporate real estate.
Right, corporate real estate, and then teaching business at Marist, I believe it was.
Marist and St. Thomas Aquinas.
Okay, but then did your divorce precede your life change, or was it a part of the change that you made? Because you've written about your divorce and the Demitasse divorce and the meaning of it. What precipitated the change in your life to turn towards the arts?
Well, actually, it was a very, very long-term plan I put together when I was about 20 years old.
Oh, so you always knew you were going to do it?
Yeah, I knew where I was going, and I had to look at the pragmatic side of life. And what I did is I had to work my way through college while I was married and had a family.
Right.
And so I'd work full-time, and then actually I had to work in heavy construction, which I hated. It was just really not my character.
But you made money.
But I made money, and it paid for family bills, and it also paid my way through education. So when I did get my corporate job...
A little closer to the mic again. I'm not sure.
When I did get the corporate job, I continued my education, and I made a number of promises to myself that I said that I always spend about 4 to 6 hours a week in a classroom. And I said, I'm going to repeat that until I can't do it anymore. So I went to college for 45 years.
Literally?
Literally, part-time. And I just had this obsession with learning, and I just wanted to go through life examining the world around me with the thought that when I get to my retirement age, I could do what I want to do. So I was very patient and said, when the time is right, I will open up my artistic side and live my life as I want it to be led.
Well, again, so people know, we know that your book, your original book is wrote the Demitasse divorce. You've written several plays, which we'll get to.
2 books.
2 books. Yeah. Well, but that book is Demitasse divorce.
Correct.
Your players are
released.
Demitasse players, and your plays focus on mental illness. Remind people why Demitasse has this theme in your work.
I guess that's a rather nice story. When I was divorced, right, and I completed my 45-year tenure, attending college, and I was also teaching at the time, I got into the arts world. And just by good fortune, I put some feelers out, and the next thing I was offered a position as the executive director at the Barrett Arts Center in Poughkeepsie. I was living in Dutchess County at the time. And all the artists would go to this place called the Demitasse Restaurant.
Now, what kinds of artists? Were they writers, painters?
Oh, the whole gambit.
The whole gambit? Okay.
And I did my first art exhibition up there. And
you paint as well?
I do pen and ink sketches.
Pen ink sketches?
Yeah.
What types of things do you sketch?
Oh, I consider myself an innocent bystander. I just watch life, and I just sketch these pictures of everyday life.
Okay, everyday life. And so you did an art exhibit. Was that your first foray into the arts? Was it your
yes,
sketches?
It was.
Okay. So now take us beyond that.
And then I was a musician, and then I started playing out.
Good grief, a musician. What did you play?
A guitar.
Good grief. Okay, continue. Keep rolling.
And I really, really embraced the arts. It's I'm wired for it. I really got tired of the analytical, quantitative side. I said, I've done that a long time.
Well, most people can't do both, so you're fortunate that you could.
I am. But though sometimes in the morning it's tough when both sides start arguing with each other as to what they want to do. But and it just opened up a lot of doorways for me. And then I said, one day I'm going to write a play. And I just sat down and I looked at life in, overall. And
no, but hold it right there, because did you take any courses in how to write a play? Did you go to playwright school, or did you go buy a book, of a how-to book, or did you just have a sense for it?
I've always been a natural writer, so.
But still, playwrights, you have to set scenes and you have to describe the characters and do backstories. And that all just came to you how to do that?
Well, it just came to me. I would watch plays and understand protagonist, antagonist.
Right.
And I just have a good sense of reading people and understanding what we call the frail human condition. And when I started watching this and watching people's lives, and also the people that were afflicted with mental illness really touched me.
And hold it there, because I'm putting these building blocks. So now you're writing your first play. You're getting ready to write your first play. If I heard you right, and your motivation, of course, was you love the arts, you love to write, and you thought you had this intuitive feel for how to write a play. Why mental illness? And it runs through almost everything you do.
Well, I grew up like most people. I think it's fair to say, and all families have some degree of being dysfunctional.
No kidding.
But there was a family member who suffered, a very brilliant person, but suffered from depression and also Munchausen's by proxy.
Mm-hmm.
And I just saw what this person tried to do. Basically attack, and the term now is gaslight. But I was wise enough to.
Can you say more about that? Were you gaslighted by this person?
I'm sorry.
What you use the term gaslight?
Oh, gaslighting is a term I'm not. It's been around for a while, but it's when you live with someone who constantly picks and attacks you.
Okay, go ahead.
And I watched this even as a youth, at a very young person, and I just said, this person has issues.
And this person was in your family?
Yes.
Okay.
And in a way, as difficult as this person was, you could almost see the pain that was inflicted on her, and it was a very tough situation because, she would say some very horrible things and do some terrible things. And, I've learned that, you have to listen to the heart and not the tongue.
Well, that's true. But now, in terms of your own reaction and what created you or your artistic sense, now a good shrink sitting here would say to you there seems to be two, or there might be two streams here. A, the fact that you love this person, but B, your ability to deal with it. How much, what's the balance there?
Well, that's why all my plays deal with existentialism, because there's actually, the way I perceive it, is two pieces of it. There's the person who has the, genetic mental disorder. It's physical. And they, in turn, behave a certain way. Now, if that's a mother or a father, the child or the children may not have that genetic, those genetics, but they start mimicking their parents. And they become, it spreads like it's an emotional cancer.
I know a family like that.
Yeah, and so the purpose of the plays is to show the victim who actually has a disorder.
Okay, but it's interesting. Now, I got to draw you back here. You talked about protagonists and antagonists.
Yeah.
But you use the word victim, and a lot of people listening probably said, well, he must mean you if you were the one getting yelled at. But you are referring to the victim as the person who is doing the abuse.
Yeah, exactly.
Now and we need to set that stage here.
Sorry.
Because aren't there really two victims here?
Well, there are many victims because, as I was watching this pan out, and I watched this, everyone behaves differently to that, and I'm being very personal, but this person was my mother.
Okay, I didn't want to pry too much, and maybe I should have.
And a very beautiful person, very attractive, and when she was in the outside world, I mean, she was top shelf. People just loved her, but in her own world, she had, personality. I think they call it DID now, multiple personalities.
She did have multiple
identity disorder.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So there was how much anger was in her, and was there any element of let's say personality? What is it? The borderline personality, or was it mostly DID?
She had a very interesting way about her. If she was out in public, she was so even keel.
Yeah.
She needed. I mean, she's a very outgoing.
She's still with us.
Very involved socially.
Is your mom still with us?
And she loved that. She loved being out there. She liked being the center of attention. But when she came home, she was a totally different person. and that's where the attacks would begin. And
Do you have sibling?
yes,
But were they attacked as well?
no,
Just you? Were you the youngest, oldest,
I was
middle?
the oldest.
You were the oldest.
Yeah.
Why do you think she chose you?
You know, I can only guess. It's just that I was always a mild-mannered person, and I was always even keel.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother had a very high IQ. And when I was very young, I tested
Yeah.
well.
That runs in the
And
family.
she didn't want the competition. So she would do anything she can to sabotage it. And, you know, when you're quite young, it's very difficult to navigate that, you know.
Well, how did your other parents view her? How do they view you now?
How do I view her?
How did they view your mom, and how do they view you now?
People that knew her from a distance will say she was the greatest person.
Well, yeah, we all know, right, but
Yeah.
but that's typical. But what about your sibling? How did they view her then and now, and then also how do they view you and what you've done with the experience?
My younger siblings it took them a little bit longer, and they finally came to that epiphany, because it's very common in human nature is that most people don't want to admit that their parents don't like them. You know, they fall into this very, like, how could it be?
Occasionally, you see that. I think most famously, Rodney Dangerfield talks very openly.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're aware of that.
That's
because
right.
His mother didn't like him. So too did his father didn't rather, and so too did Johnny Carson. Didn't
Yeah.
go to his own mother's funeral.
Yeah.
So that exists. But let's go to you for a second again, because you've turned this into a magical success, and the Demi-Task players. Again, we're talking with Dr. Richard Cerulli. Yes, he has a PhD, but he moved from more traditional work into the arts several years ago. He's a producer, playwright, and I guess the executive director, or at least the leader of the Demi-Task players, an essentially existential troupe of players, of actors. He writes plays, he writes books, one that's sitting on the desk and that I started reading at home, The Demi-Task Divorce. What effect did it have on you?
Well, when I looked at this, and I came out pretty unscathed. I had a good perspective of life as a young child, and I said, I'm just not going to let it impact me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm held hostage until I reach that age where I can move out. And so I developed a quick sense of humor, because that was the only way I could diffuse the attack.
Yeah, I survived with a sense of humor myself. Go ahead.
So, and oddly enough, she did have a good sense of humor, so I've learned that if I could hit that button with her, it would, you know, basically neutralize the attack.
What about your dad? Where was he in all of this? And did he come to your defense, or did he say, come on, let's get out of the house and away from her? Or?
Yeah, my father was an absentee father. And
So
we came from a solid middle class.
was it because he was working a lot, or did he leave?
Parenthood and family wasn't for him, to be nice,
Okay.
you know, to be diplomatic. He just really felt that nobody owned him and he had no obligations.
I see.
But you know, we did, you know, we were very fortunate. We grew up in a solid middle
No,
class.
but he still put bread on the table.
Yeah, he really, you know, children were more of a liability than anything
Understood.
else.
This has to have impacted your feelings. You know, as a good doctor once said to me, how do you feel about that? How did you feel as you were growing up about your mom and about your dad? Not intellectually, emotionally. How did you feel?
You know, I'll be honest, I was emotionally neutral to it.
Or were you in denial, or were you emotionally, did you do that to protect yourself?
No, I just looked at these two people, and you know, I think I'm trying to make light of something serious.
Oh no, you must, and also,
Okay.
and I just want to put back in perspective, because I know you'll care about it. You consider the victim still your mother in this scenario, which is
It's very tragic.
enlightening or tragic. But go ahead.
And what would happen is, you know,
Or both.
you're young and you're watching TV, and at that time, the shows had a moral story to them. They're not like
Mhm.
today. It was
Right.
always about serving something greater
A
than
higher
yourself.
good, right?
But you know, you'd watch things like Father Knows Best or something like
Oh God, yeah, they were the perfect families.
that. Yeah, and I'll
absolutely.
be watching that,
Ozzie and Harry.
and then I would look at my family and say, "There's a big disconnect."
Nobody
Now,
has a family like
Yeah,
that.
like I know this is like supposed to be perfect, And we could stray a little bit, but this was like way off the charts. I mean, it wasn't even close. So I just said, this is not normal, and probably there's a good percentage of people that are experiencing the same thing.
Because yes, but what's interesting is you have said you were emotionally neutral, which I agree with your perception of it. But whether it was intellectual or emotional, it drove everything that you're doing now. So we need to keep that connection.
Yeah.
As we roll forward with this, because it's fascinating. I mean, we're all driven by our experiences, of course.
Yeah.
This is fascinating stuff. So now, and again, for the sake of moving along, so that was your childhood, but you view your mother as a victim, and it was her fight with mental illness that drove this. Now, did she ever develop, before we get to this very next step, did your mother ever have insight into her issues? Did she ever apologize for her behavior? And is she aware of how it affected the work you do now? Is your mom still with us?
No, that was fair. She was aware of her illness.
Okay.
But she was pretty oblivious of how it was impacting the children, and actually people close to her. It was, watching it in a clinical sense, it was quite a contradiction. Here's a person at one point, saying, I got issues, I can't control them, I need help. And then at the same time, a few minutes later, she's actually attacking. And one of the problems also is that, in fairness, was a bad time for her, because this was like in the 50s, early 60s.
Sure.
If you had a mental illness,
you weren't open about it.
You were crazy.
Yeah.
That was it. It was very harsh. Also, she was a woman, so she couldn't go where she wanted to
Absolutely.
go. She was, even her parents. She had an older brother, and her older brother was nowhere near her in terms of intellect. I mean, she was quite a smart woman, and the family would also berate her. You're nothing but a stupid woman. Get married,
Oh, right, because that's the traditional expectation in those days.
Yeah.
It was in those
So
days.
she, in all fairness, she got hit by, socially, behaviorally, and just poor perception.
Okay. Does she realize that the way she was, that your work is a result of that in large part?
Correct.
Does she know that? Or did she know that?
What's the question?
Did she realize, or do you think, is she still with us? That was my other question. Your mother's still alive?
No.
Okay, but before you lost her, was she aware that it was her behavior that drove the essence of your creativity? Your plays, et
that's a
cetera?
very good question. And I can honestly say I'm a little bit baffled, because she had this uncanny sense of manipulation.
Oh, yeah.
Quite a bit.
People handicapped physically and emotionally know how to manipulate. It comes with
And
the territory.
I almost got the impression, and I think I'm right, is that she wanted to be harsh, to say, look, son, the world's going to get ugly. And if it's ugly in this house, can you imagine what's going to be when you're dealing with non-family members?
Okay.
It's like that song by Johnny Carson, A Boy Named Sue.
But, yeah.
Yeah, and
Now, did what went on in your childhood home, did it affect your marriage? Or was that a whole separate issue? What went wrong with your marriage?
no, I think what really affected...
And I wouldn't even ask about it if you didn't write a book called Demi-Tasse Divorce, by the
No,
way.
I'm a very open, honest
No,
person.
but since it's in your work, we go there. Did it affect your relationships with other people, and did it affect your relationship with your wife?
Now, it actually made me a more outgoing person.
Okay.
Because what I did is I looked at their behavior, and I said, whatever they do, I'm going to do the opposite. Because what they're doing isn't right. You just knew in your heart, your soul.
You mean you're talking about your parents in this case?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to make the jump again, only in the interest of time. And again, I remind folks, we're with a very fascinating man. He is a playwright, a producer of plays. The troupe that he manages, that he directs, is the Demi-Tasse Players. He also has written 2 books and several plays. And a little later on, we're going to be telling you how you can help his organization. He needs actors and volunteers and everything else. But your first, did you write the book first or a play first? What was your first
I
play?
wrote the play first.
What's the name of the play?
The play was Via Dolorosa.
Okay, why?
Because my mother's name was Dolores.
Okay, so once again, that's why now we made that connection between
Exactly.
your mother and Dolorosa. Let's get into the play. What's the play about?
The play takes place initially back in the 60s. And it dealt with my childhood, of course, fictitious names. And what I did in this play is I had her, as you go through the play, she's the protagonist, antagonist.
Yeah, but she would have to be. You made her the victim, but yet she's the antagonist too.
Yeah, she, the reason why I call it Via Dolorosa, Dolores was her name.
Right.
We grew up in a very traditional Catholic family. And, the Via Dolorosa was the path that, Jesus took and, that. And I remember as a young child, there was a picture of her on the mantle at my grandmother's house when she was maybe 5 or 6 years old, and she wasn't smiling. And my grandmother picked up the picture and put it in front of me. She says, when your mother was born, I just felt that she was going to have a hard, miserable life.
How could you know that? Where does that, obviously your mother was preceded by people who had their issues too.
Oh, exactly.
How do you look at a baby and say it's going to have a miserable life unless you're a drug addict and living in a tenement? And even then, that might not be the case. That's a hell of a statement.
They were actually prompting this failure.
Well, almost, creating an expectation of failure. That's not a very high bar. So that's why you named the play. So what takes place? What is go by act, if you will.
Okay.
What are the first? Give me the treetops. What are the 3 acts? Where do you go in the play?
Well, the first act is basically the son, who in the play, his name is Jade. It's taking place in the late 60s. He's got long hair, and he's out making out with his girlfriend.
Okay,
that's which is
good.
very typical. And he realizes it's late, and he jumps through the window so he doesn't get caught. And his younger brother says, "Give me $20 and I won't tell anybody. I won't tell mom and dad." So he just realizes his younger brother's extorting him. And so, then they're supposed to get ready for school. So the younger brother goes out. He's having breakfast with, Dolores. And she says, "Where's your brother?" And she says, "Oh, I can't tell a lie." He says, he came in at 2 o'clock, half dressed in the morning, and he actually said, "Here's $20. Don't tell mom."
Oh my.
Yeah. So, and
what are you trying to accomplish in this? I don't want to give away the whole play. I want people to go see it when you run it again. What are you establishing in the first act?
Well, the first act, it was showing that actually the protagonist was the antagonist in her eyes. So the audience is looking at
In other words, your mother's looking at, or the mom is looking at the son like the son is the problem.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the audience is watching this, and they're saying, "Yeah, typical long hair, radical
Little
kid,
hippie, whatever."
Boy, she got her hands full. And she's like the hero. Then all of a sudden we start pulling back and we see the things that she's doing to sabotage the son. And then it goes boo hiss, boo hiss, boo hiss, and everybody, what a terrible person.
In other words, now it's established that she's a terrible person in Act 2.
And then there is a scene where her father comes and visits her and brings her cake and gifts and everything else. And it's revealed that she was sexually molested by the father.
Hold it right there. Was your mom molested in real life? Because ergo, that's why when you started this, I asked about borderline personality or those kinds of things. Whenever, I actually wrote a piece about this once. I knew a woman very close with her, and she had been sexually molested when she was 5, and she had a borderline personality problem. And boy, talk about, and you're so right, they may seem like an antagonist in one context, but they truly are the victim.
Exactly.
All right, so okay, continue. I just wanted to get that out there because I get it now. Now, she's coming into full view.
Yeah, and now the audience looks at this and said, maybe we shouldn't judge too quickly.
Right. Yeah, it's okay. Which I remember my own epiphany when I realized that. Yeah. Continue.
And what I like to do in my plays and my work is twist and keep the audience in suspense.
Well, they were, because right now it's like we don't know who to be mad at. Go ahead. And what about the boy? What's the boy doing in Act Two? When does he begin to realize that, my God, look at what she's been through? When does it hit him?
He picks it up initially, but he's really that much not in the play. He has only a few scenes. And behind the scenes is the mother talking to her girlfriends. Like for argument's sake, there was a scene there where the school calls up and says, "We rescheduled, the geometry exam. Please tell Rich he's a good student that it's going to be on such and such a date." And she wouldn't tell me. And then I would go to the school the wrong day, and I failed. And she wanted to see failure, and
she wanted to see failure.
I think
because now that we're dealing with her and we're dealing with her emotional pain, would seeing your failure somehow, or the failure of the boy in the play, who's allegorical to you, would she get pleasure from that, or would it just bring everybody down to the level she feels she's at?
Looking at it.
Well, as the playwright, what was your intent there?
Yeah, looking at it, my view is that she grew up where her parents attacked her, never gave her credit, and as a result, she couldn't be who she should have been.
Or could have been. Okay.
So she resents the parents for holding her back, attacking her. But she can't attack her parents because you have to love your parents.
Right. So now, but which is woven through here, including for the boy, and perhaps in your own life, including you. So now, Act 3, because I want to talk about some of the other plays too, but in general. But what happens in Act 3?
Well, it's then I think she just took it out on me. She just mimicked her parents' behavior and took it out on me. That's how she took out her frustration.
And how does the play wrap?
Well, all my plays don't have happy endings.
I sense that.
But I want that to tell people, if you don't insert yourself and make the changes, this is what happens.
So how does it end?
Well, at the end, the son becomes a very famous economist, and he loses contact with them. It doesn't return the calls. And the mother's on her deathbed, and she's in the hospital, and it's her last breaths. And she says to the nurse, "Where's my son Jade? I have to talk to him. I have to talk to him before I pass." And he doesn't show up.
Okay.
Or she doesn't see it, but he's standing in the doorway of the intensive care room. And he's listening, but he doesn't go in to actually see her. And as she takes her last breath, he just closes the door, and you hear the door slam.
Okay. Two things. One, does that realistically represent how you felt at the end? Because to hear you talk before we talked about the play, the love for your mother and your understanding of her as a victim stands out. But yet you show in the play, at the end, you close the door on her. What's in real life? Did you emotionally close the door, or were you trying to make a point in the play?
Well, closing the door in the play was meant that we finally have closure.
Well, you have closure.
Yeah.
But we also have, it sounds like a severing, a disconnect now. You go on, you're free. But yet, as you say, the play is about her as a victim.
Yeah.
Do you think people watching the play got that, or do you think they say she got what she deserved and that this is the result of living the life she lived?
Well, that's a very good question, because I wrote the play, so when people walked out, they would have to question that.
Well, that's the kind of thinking you want, but also you probably wanted them thinking, and again, I can ask you because you know the character it was based on. At the end of your mother's life, what were you feeling?
It was a tough decision. It wasn't an easy decision.
Which was?
To just not respond.
So you didn't go to her wake?
No.
Okay. How long did it take you after then to realize that she was a victim? In other words, see, as a playwright, I'm so interested in this process. There were two victims here.
Exactly.
You and her. There were two victims, and it's not a clear black and white issue.
No, it's not.
So that's your first play. Now let's get into what you do. You directed it?
That one, no, I actually had a director come in for that one.
Okay, how to be actor, but you wrote it.
Yes.
Did you act in it at all?
No,
Okay.
I'm not an actor.
What was the time frame of the play? How long did it last?
An hour and a half.
Hour and a half play. And where did you do it?
At the White Plains Performing Arts Center.
Okay, how many runs did you do? How many?
We just did one run because it was the first play. I just wanted to get my feet wet and see what the response is.
What was the response?
Very good. I invited a lot of psychologists, psychiatrists,
Of course, makes
social
sense.
workers, and actually a lot of the mental health practitioners took their patients to use it as a learning tool. And we had a good turnout. We had a very good turnout. And but I think the real happiness it brought me is when a couple of the patients came up to me and said, thank you. I was in that position, and all these years I thought it was me, that I was a failure because I couldn't believe my parents could actually not like me or do these things. And it did open the eyes of a lot of people. I did expose myself as a person.
You sure did. And you've done it here.
Yeah. But then again, that's life. It's truth, I mean, once we're honest with ourselves, you rise above.
No, I get that. Do you regret not having gone to her wake?
Sorry?
Do you regret not having gone to her wake to watch her die?
I did go to the wake.
Oh, the wake, but you didn't go to the hospital at the end.
No,
Okay.
it was that was the existential question that I was going to leave the audience with, is that how do you correct the wrong? And how do you respond to that?
I don't know that you can correct that. It is what it is.
To me,
In fact, it's up to you to reconcile your life to what happened and get some insight and move on. You got to have a life.
Yeah,
as you've had.
I find it to be a very perplexing question for me as well, because
It makes for a great
I'm
play,
a very
and-
forgiving person. But then I put it in the context. I said, would a rape victim go up to the aggressor?
See, that's the other story here, and that's what I was getting at the beginning of this. I'm sorry to,
good,
interrupt you, because you are the victim, but yet her mental illness is at the heart of the play.
Exactly.
Nurse Ratchet like almost. Okay, now we'll talk more about you and that as we go and with some of the weeks ahead. But all right, so that's your first play. What other plays have you written? How many are out there? And, by the way, how is attendance? And again, you invited all kinds of people. Do you have a few hundred people there?
Yeah, we have good attendance. I mean, for experiential theater, Westchester's, it's really not the market for it. It's really, the city is.
It's a city market.
Because this is very existential, deep. It's not entertaining. It's informative.
You know what? You can do both. Because if you don't entertain, people don't see it. It's like that Nurse Jackie series, which is very hard to watch.
Yeah.
Because of watching this character fall apart from drug use. It's very painful. It's not always entertaining, but yet it's written enough to hold you. What other plays have you written?
The next play I did was Rondelay, which we did a year later. Mm-hmm. I was concerned I didn't want to be like, quote, a one-hit wonder.
No, what's the play about?
This one deals with the illness we focused on was DID, dissociative identity disorder. Mm-hmm. And it focuses on, the setting is they're at this restaurant, and the husband's there. He was just made senior vice president of architecture for the New York office of a fictitious architectural
Sounds like
firm.
Somebody I know. Go ahead.
And as they're toasting him, his wife is to the distant, and she's flirting with this guy at the bar. And so when he goes over to put his arm around her, she pushes him off, and she walks over to the guy at the bar, and he's a big, husky construction worker. And she says, I'm going with him. He's a real man, not like you.
Hold it right there. Because there are 1 million people listening, if we have that many, who have been down this road, who are artistic, who are cerebral, who are nerdy. And as a kid, it's the worst time to be, not later on. But even though, and so you move on, and there's this tendency for people in one's life to say, that guy, as long as we're talking about male characters, that guy's manly, you're not.
Yeah.
And that's a horrible feeling for any man, even if he knows he's a nerd.
That's right.
Where is that coming from in here? Have you experienced that?
Yeah, I was very, very fortunate that some years ago I was good friends of a lady friend. And we had she had some issues, but she was a very interesting conversationalist. And she went on to say how she had severe mental issues. And she had a drinking problem. And I don't drink, but one day she calls up and says, Rich, let's go to a bar. I said, I don't drink. She says, well, just come to the bar and have cranberry juice. I just want to spend some time and chat. So go to the bar. No, I'm not involved with her. She's just a really good friend. And
Yeah, sure, no, I get it.
Very, she's younger, blonde. She's got all the attributes for a very attractive person.
Yeah, I'm buying that.
And so I buy her a glass of wine, and she's very friendly. And second glass of wine, and she hits the third glass of wine. She looks at me, and she had her hair in a beret, and she pulls it off. She lets her hair down. She gave me this real seductive look, and she shows me away. She says, you could go home now. And she walks across the bar, and she goes on this guy. And the next thing I know, they go into the parking lot.
Sure. Yeah, whatever,
okay, we
right.
don't have to go get to the graphics. And then she came back. I mean, I didn't care. I mean, I'm not her. We weren't
You're not
involved.
a lover, right?
I just was talking to some people. She comes back like an hour later, sits down at the bar as if nothing happened. And
Why do that? What were you trying to say there? What were we trying to get the public?
That's what they
reader to
call
get?
dissociative identity disorder.
So she was two different people in that moment.
Yes, exactly.
She became the girl outside slutting around with the guy, but then she came in to talk to you or whomever. Now there's a lot of other subtleties in this whole scene. I mean, we see it in society. A lot of guys when they're younger who don't come off as macho, they weren't captain of the football team. A lot of women that maybe that guy likes, they're going out with all the guys with tattoos who drink and have the leather jackets. But then when they're 35 or 40, they realize the mistake they made.
Yeah.
And they start flirting with the nerd.
Yeah.
There's that element in there too. But but you're focusing on now the DID. Let's truncate this just to get the essence of the play. So is the play about her or the guy? And if it's about her, what is the story about? Give us the arc, just the arc.
Okay. Well, what happens is, we look at it, and when I wrote the play, I said, let's see how this would pan out in the long term. So as she insults him in front of all his business friends and everything else, which was very humiliating, the bartender gives him this nice talk because they're good friends, and basically tells him, I'm tired of watching these pathetic reruns. You've got to get your life together and take control. And this fellow is just, very idealistic, and he says, well, it's my wife, I love her. She's got
How did she become his wife now? Where did that happen?
Sorry?
Who you just skipped to who? Is this the protagonist now is married to her or someone else?
No, he's married to this woman who insults him at this event.
Okay, is this a separate vignette or are these the two characters from the previous engagement?
No, this is from the play Rondelay, the second play.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about. No,
Yeah.
but there's the woman that came in, wanted to talk with the guy. Then she goes out, screws the guy, whatever, in the parking lot, comes back in. Is it that character? Or are these
Yeah,
different
I've used that character as a basis for the...
Okay, but is she later on the person who's married?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And who is it a different guy that she married, or did she ultimately marry the guy she was talking to, not screwing in the bar?
Well, what happens is the fellow's humiliated. His wife puts him down, and she does it frequently. It comes out, and people are trying to tell him he has to get his life together.
Mm-hmm.
And the bartender, being a longtime friend, made his high school girlfriend appear after that. So they reconnect, and fast forward, he divorces his wife and is now engaged to this woman who they were high school sweethearts. He's a big architect. Now she's a defense attorney. I mean, a big corporate attorney. And the ex-wife is quite upset. And I put a lot of contradiction there. Andrew was the name of the architect, very sophisticated, upscale. Blanca, his fiancée, everything. But his first wife comes from a very dysfunctional blue-collar family.
And we keep going back to that. Now again, I'm a little scattered here because you have the first couple goes in, okay. and we demonstrate that she has a dual personality. Which of those couples has succeeded on into the third act? Which of those two, or are these different couples we're talking about? You can't hear me? Can you hear me now? I'm saying which of those couples, I'm going back to the first couple you mentioned. The girl comes in, she meets the this guy.
Yeah.
Then she goes out in the parking lot, schools around, and comes back in. Those two people, where are they in the third act?
Okay.
Or are they not? Or are they different people?
Oh, they're different people.
Okay, good. All right.
Yeah, sorry. That was actually a real life event, which prompted me to write the play, because this behavior, when I experienced it, I started talking to other people about it, and I came across. I was actually at a.
I see.
I was reciting some poetry at some event, and this woman comes up. She starts talking to me, and she says, "I noticed there's a lot of mental illness when you write." I says, "That's correct." And she says, "I'm working on this book on DID."
Okay, got it.
And she went on to say, and I asked her, I says, "Well, what made you come across this?" And she says, "Well, what happened is I'd go to a party with my boyfriend, and as soon as I went to the party, he pushed me aside and ignored me all night and flirted with all the women. And then at the end of the day, he'd come back to me and cling on to me. And this happened all the time, and he was very insulting. It was not a good social grace."
Is this where you got the ammunition for this play? As
Exactly.
Well?
Then
okay. Now, how does this play end? Because I don't want to give it all away. Now, you've done this play already?
Yes.
How many showings? One?
We do this one show.
Okay. How was it received?
Very well.
How did it end?
Not well.
Tell me
Because
how.
what happens is a dialogue between the attorney, who's very polished with her. They both meet at a restaurant, and that's what we call it, Rondelay. And the ex-wife wants to sabotage, obviously, the marriage. And she doesn't take any responsibility for her infidelities, all her issues. And they get into a bit of a catfight. Blanca is very cerebral, low-keyed. Diana, she comes from a very rough background.
Okay,
But she's smart.
I got that. She's probably wily. And
Yes.
Yeah. Now, what was the message of that play?
Well, the
In the
message
interest of time, because we'll be talking again in the future weeks. But in the essence of time, though, what was the message of this play?
I wanted people to see this because even before the play was written, you'd be talking to people and you'd be out in these social events and you would see this behavior happening. Either the wife or the husband would, just disregard, insult their partner and start flirting with everyone else. And if you talk to them, they would say, "Oh, he's just a flirt. Oh, he just had too much to drink." And they reduce the illness to a cliche.
Now, his illness of having sort of a couple of personalities in there, not even being
and they never went to the heart of it. And
which was, or which is,
what's really causing this?
Well, it could be situational, or he could have a mental problem. All right. So that play, how was it received?
Very well.
Okay. How many other plays have you written?
Then after that, the following year I did A Lonely Summit. And that took a little bit of a difference. This is about an aging baby boomer who goes to a psychologist. Not because he has mental problems. He wants to recite his life.
He wants to what?
Recite his life story.
Oh, okay. Okay, hold on. Now, has this one play has it been played yet?
Yes.
Okay, because we'll get to that one next week. And how many other plays have you written?
And then we just did a play in June called Thoughts for a Lost Friend, which deals with, it was dedicated to the Vietnam veterans.
Okay.
Because it's two former lovers finding closure 40 years after the loss of a mutual friend in Vietnam.
I got stories for you. How many, now, are you working on a play now?
Yes.
What's the...
It's a short play that's going to be on cable called Bottle Cap.
Bottle Cap? What's it about?
It's about how an adult son deals with a toxic bipolar father in adult life.
A lot of people have had that too.
Yeah.
All right. This book, Demi-Tasse Divorce. And I know you've written another one.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that before we wrap today, and then we'll get to those other plays next week. But before we wrap, I also want to know how many players you have, what you need, and so forth. Tell me about this. I took it home to read it, and I'm going to start this weekend. What's it about?
This is about, once again, it takes place around early 1990s.
Mm-hmm.
I used to write columns about the baby boom generation.
Now, it's about a divorce of baby boomers.
And these two people meet happen chance at the Demi-Tasse Cafe on the Hudson River in Cold Spring, New York.
Gee.
And they just really hit it off very well, very accidentally. And they're both in failed marriages, infidelities, things like that. And they want to find life before they're too old. The woman is worried about, losing the gravity war and the wrinkles.
Right.
And Elia is worried about, am I going to go to the rest of my life with regrets?
Mm-hmm.
And they both didn't want to go to their deathbed saying, wow, I really miss life. So they both have a lot in common. There's a difference between them. So they seek this romance. So romance and the sensuality in the play become, it's a protagonist.
Well, is this a play? This is a book, though.
This is a book, yeah.
Okay, in this story. Okay.
Yeah.
So romance, sensuality, they're a part of almost any relationship of this type.
And I emphasize, I said, an existential and erotic infidelity question mark, because it's also a mystery. As people are reading this story.
See, this I don't want the end because
Yeah.
you're trying to sell a book
Yeah.
here. So, and we're going to pick this up next week. So, the arc. So it's about boomers who fall in love. They're in failed marriages. It's sensuous. See, this is the kind of book that can go any way.
Yes.
I talk about a lot on the air. I was always disappointed at Anna Karenina because I thought that had I written that book, she would not have died. Okay. Because that is a form of writing that is and novels even by the greats.
Yeah.
That where the characters have to be true to their flaws, and that's not reality.
Exactly.
Sometimes, because I thought in her case, the way she was treated by her husband, the way she was almost a prisoner of him, that she had every right to cheat on him and to move on with her life.
Yes.
And yet she dies at the end, and that's the price she pays.
Yeah.
So when I see a book like this, and since they're both probably starting to get involved even before they're divorced, it makes you wonder where you're going to take this story. Am I on anything here?
Well, that's why there's the question.
Yeah, I don't want to go there because I
don't
want to give it away, and it's called Demi-Tasse Divorce. Now, do they ultimately get divorced? I didn't want to ask that much. Okay, he's got the look, folks, and thank God he's got the look that says, I don't want to give that away yet.
Yeah, it's...
What's your other book?
Other book?
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm working on taking one of my plays, Thoughts for a Lost Friend, and turning that into a book.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, most of my plays start off as a book, but then I do it as a play, because I think I enjoy theater. So
Okay, well, I'm going to have to send you my book then that I wrote about mental illness in my own memoir. You'll probably, given where you go with this, you'll enjoy it. All right, let's talk about your organization and how people can help. Now, I know, and I'm going to repeat this for folks, DemiTassePlayers.com, www.DemiTassePlayers.com. You go on there, you'll see the things he does. It's called an essential troop. There are players, there are books, there are plays, and there will be a cable play. And they're located in White Plains, and he's Dr. Richard Cerulli. What do you need? How can we help you?
I'm appealing to the community in general because we're a charity.
Mm-hmm.
And we're really dedicated. I mean, I have really a great troupe. And
how many actors do you have?
About 10.
Okay, you probably need more, though.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
We converted to a repertory theater where we get a core of actors,
Mm-hmm.
and we start working our work around the talent pool within
Right,
there.
I see.
But they all work pro bono.
Of course, it's same reason I play hockey or we do something. I was in one movie, you know.
Really?
Yeah, I get killed in the end. Damn it.
Well, it sounds like one of my movies.
No, I know what I play. It's really was a horror flick. It was a serial to Psycho.
Yeah.
And I get killed by his brother in the end. I play a psychiatrist.
Oh,
yeah,
geez.
it's called
Great
The Conversation with Norman. But at any rate, so that's my acting experience. But so you have troops, you have actors. You now, What do you need? You need. I know you said you need actors, but you also need donations and volunteers.
Yeah, donations,
what opportunities are
sponsors,
there? Okay.
and volunteers be very helpful. I've been self-funding these plays for the last.
I realize
and
that.
it's not cheap.
No, not at all. We're just renting, just getting the theater.
Yeah, because we're really looking for sponsors because our goal is to, when we do these plays, to make enough revenue to turn it over to either a psychologist practice or a social worker and say, we're giving you this money in case somebody calls and they're suicidal or has an issue and they don't have health benefits. And we would rather, here's some money to take care of them so they don't do anything.
So you're talking about any profit that you would generate from this.
Yeah, all the profits would go back into
into helping people and producing these plays.
So we're
now, will you always do plays that focus on mental illness or these kinds of social problems?
They always deal with mental illness or the existential view of life.
Now, you've used existential a lot. It means a lot of things to different people. You know, to people like me who are agnostic, it means this all is what it is, and we better make the best of it. What does it mean to you, that word?
Oh, in a nutshell, in one sentence, it means taking our life from existence and taking it to our essence.
Say more.
You know, there's a whole school of thought on that, but what I try to do is put people in these situations where it makes them think, and think deeply, and reflect.
We're going to continue this next week, but what I want to do now is tell people once again the things you need. Put a little laundry list right out there now. Volunteers, sponsors, etc. Tell them what you need and how people can get a hold of you.
Okay, I'm appealing for your help. You could go to our website. And there's an email address, and I'm going to be...
the website, and I'm going to repeat that for them, is demitaskplayers.com, www.demitaskplayers.com.
Okay, and what I'll also do, because, I take this rather personally, I'll actually give you my personal cell number. For those who are sincerely and genuinely interested in assisting.
Is that on the card? Is this the same one on the card?
That's the business number.
Okay, what's the personal cell?
My personal cell...
Give it twice and slowly.
Okay. It's area code 845-380-2872.
Again?
Area code 845-380-2872. That's my personal cell. And if you're genuinely interested and you want to help, I'd love to speak with you.
Okay, how can they get this book?
Oh, Barnes & Noble.
Okay.
Amazon or Kindle.
And again, it's Demitask Divorce and Existential and Erotic Infidelity, ? By Richard Cerulli, who is our guest. Renaissance man, you certainly are a Renaissance man. And with a mission to raise funds for the treatment of mental illness. You'd probably be interested in the board that I'm on that deals with mental illness too, called Choice. And they deal with the homeless and the mentally ill. We'll talk more about that. Next week, can you come back?
I'll be back.
I want to talk about those other plays and then what else you have in your future.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Cerulli, everyone. Dr. Richard Cerulli changed his life, changed his career. And as you can see from the earlier part of our discussion, his work is certainly influenced by personal experience. Richard Cerulli, thank you very much. This morning was brought to you by the United Hebrew of New Rochelle, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhdc.com. Aging Issues Management and their partners, Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, Dominic's Fine Cigars, pluginvirtualreality.com, and coming next week, the Beachmont Tavern. I'm Bob Marrone, along with Jake Schaefer, and we need to thank some people: Vince Russo, Anthony calling in. I'm looking at the wrong day here, but I got that part right. Janelle Albritton with our public health information, Steve Callis, Al Tarantino, Dr. Victor Sternberg, and Richard Cerulli, and of course, we almost forgot to mention Hezi Aris with his newsbreaker about the schools closing. It's raining. It's about 47 degrees. The rain is going to give way to sun this afternoon. It's going to get up to 67. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you again on Tuesday morning. I'm Bob Marrone. Be safe out there.